The heat lay heavy on King's Landing that morning, as though the city had drawn the damp breath of Blackwater Bay and forgotten how to let it go. Brick walls exhaled warmth in slow waves, and the sky shimmered silver-white above the rooftops, tinting the red keep to rust. Robert Baratheon tasted sea salt in the air and thought it strange. He had not scented the sea so strongly since Storm's End. On the balcony outside the small council chamber, he stood alone, one hand braced on the carved balustrade, the other cupped about a goblet of watered Dornish red, watered at Grandmaster Pycelle's insistence. The old leech claimed his grace's liver had swollen to the size of 3 melons. Robert had sworn at him, but he hated him too. Ned would have laughed to see it, the king denying himself wine. A gull wheeled high overhead, mocking, and Robert's gaze lingered on it. He had dreamed of flying once, long before he'd dreamed of thrones, but hammers and howls, and the feel of steel inside steel, had replaced those gentler fancies. Now 10 years after he'd wrenched the realm from Aerys Targaryen's dying fists, he found himself craving stillness instead of flight, a stillness that eluded him. Behind the doors, the small council murmured. Parchment shuffled, quill scratched. He could almost hear the measured cadence of Ned Stark's voice, slow as meltwater over rock. Eddard would try to soften the edges of court. He always did, though Robert knew damn well the walls were sharper than any blade. He took a draught of the thin wine, tasted more water than grape, and grimaced. The clack of hinges drew his attention. Lord Renly slipped out, green silk doublet gleaming, a summer smile on his face. "They've near finished the accounts, your grace. Lord Stark is pressing for a reduction in the hands tourney. Says the crown can ill afford such extravagance until the harvest tithes are tallied." Robert arched a dark brow. "Gods grace us all. Did I not make the man hand precisely so I could have my tourney? Is it too much to ask for a decent joust and a skin of strong wine after half a year on the King's Road listening to Jon Arryn cough himself to bone?" Renly spread his hands. "You'll need to tell him so yourself. He listens better to you than to any of us." Robert snorted. "A lie, and you know it. He listens to honor. Pity honor won't fill a hall with cheering men or oil the hinges of a fat purse." Renly's grin slipped, just a fraction. "There's word from Dragonstone, brother. A raven came at dawn." He lowered his voice. "Stannis writes that he has found. I know what he's found." Robert slammed the goblet down on the balustrade hard enough to crack the stem. "Stannis finds treasons in soup and secrets in shadows. Whatever it is, let him stew with it a while longer." He looked away, toward the maze of city streets baking beneath the sun. "Jon Arryn died too quick, Renly. Too damn quick." Renly hesitated. "Stannis will not rest. You know our brother." Robert closed thick fingers over the goblet again. A drop of wine bled onto his knuckles like garnet. "I'll speak with Ned after council. He was as close to Jon as any man alive. If there's rot beneath these stones, he'll sniff it out." Renly bowed and left, silk whispering. Robert lingered, watching the gull until it vanished into the glare. At last he turned, set his shoulders, and strode inside. The chamber smelled of candles, heated wax, and burning wick. And somewhere beneath it, the dry tang of ink. Varys, robed in lavender, perched at the foot of the table like a patient spider, hands folded atop a ledger. Littlefinger reclined, flicking a quill idly between his fingers. Pycelle dozed over a tome, white beard drifting with each soft snore. And Ned, Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, stood by the window, gray eyes fixed on Robert's approach. The king did not waste breath on pleasantries. "Tell me, Ned, why in 7 hells do you begrudge me my games?" Ned's mouth quirked, barely. "A king's games cost a kingdom's coin. The coffers are near empty." "Near," Littlefinger drawled. "Near implies a margin of comfort, my lord. I'd call them utterly barren." Robert gave Petyr Baelish a look that could fell timber. "And whose fault is that? We've gold in the ground aplenty and debts overdue from half the bloody reach. I could melt your lordship's reins and pay for a week's feasting." Littlefinger's smile only widened. "Then by all means, your grace, have them." Pycelle jolted awake with a snort. "Your grace, if I may." "You may not," Robert growled. He turned again to Ned. I want the tourney, Stark. Ned folded his arms. Then you shall have it. But I will see the lists shortened, the purses halved, and the small folk fed at the city's expense. We cannot ask them to cheer while their children starve. Robert huffed a laugh. You'd feed every brat south of the neck on seed and sermon if you could. Fine, slash the purses. Let the knights cry. But the joust goes forward. Ultimatum. A compromise. Ned nodded once, brisk. Robert felt a pang of gratitude, unexpected, and almost painful. Gods. But it was good to have the man beside him again. With Jon gone, the court had grown slick as a greased pole, and Robert no longer had the strength or the will to climb. Ned's presence steadied him as mead steadies a trembling hand. The meeting droned on, grain tallies, new levies of soldiers requested by Lord Tyrell for some minor squabble along the Mander. Riders spotted in the Dornish marches wearing black sun and spear badges. Robert half listened, half watched Ned. The way he pinched the bridge of his nose when numbers rose too high, the set of his jaw when Varys spoke of certain rumors from across the narrow sea. Ned hated rumors. Robert hated them too, but for different reasons. Rumors were water. They flowed everywhere, seeped into cracks, drowned better men. When at last Pycelle intoned a blessing and called the council adjourned, Robert beckoned Ned with a tilt of his head and strode out, not to the balcony this time, but toward the stair that led down to the lower terraces, where the air moved freer. Ned followed, silent. They emerged into a cypress-lined walkway overlooking the outer curtain wall, and Robert paused beneath an arch of pale stone. Guards kept their distance. Only the rustle of leaves and the distant clang of forges reached them. Ned. The name came rough. Robert scrubbed a palm over his face. Stannis sent me a letter. Gray eyes sharpened. What news? I've not opened it. You. Ned caught himself. Why? Robert stared at a cypress branch nodding heavy with resin. Because I fear its words. And because part of me already knows them. Done. Ned said nothing. But the silence between them deepened, waited. Jon was digging at something before he died, Robert went on. He wrote me, spoke of a line of inquiry. Cersei claims it was some dull matter of accounts, but I saw the light in his eyes. You know the light I mean. I do. Stannis was close with Jon, closer than he's been with any man living. If Stannis writes now, it means the work's done, the truth found. Robert's voice cracked on the word. And God's help me, Ned, I'm not certain I want it. Ned laid a hand on the parapet. Truth is like winter, Robert. It comes whether we will it or no. The king released a breath. Then stand with me when I face it. I will stand. Robert turned, clasped Ned's forearm, felt the answering grip strong and certain. You were always my brother, and you mine. Cersei Lannister watched from her solar window as the king and his hand parted in the courtyard below. Robert heading toward the training yard, Ned disappearing under an arch that led deeper into the keep. Even at this distance she read the tension in Robert's stance. The half-turned shoulders, the set jaw. No laughter shook him now. She sipped Arbor Gold, its chill a relief against the room's heat. Your Grace. Septa Mordain curtsied at the door. Princess Myrcella asks if she may walk in the Godswood. Cersei blinked, recalled herself. Yes, of course. Ser Eris will accompany her. The Septa retreated. Cersei let the drapery fall and moved across the chamber. Sunlight pooled on the carpets she'd ordered from Tyrosh, bright with woven peacocks. The lion sigil embroidered on her gown caught the light and gleamed. Yet inside she felt no splendor, only a hollow beat of unease. The rumor that Jon Arryn had died of a chill did not satisfy her. Men did not speak of chills in whispers. They spoke of poison, and poison, she knew, was the woman's weapon. Women and eunuchs and clever little men. She poured more wine. Outside her window the sound of steel on steel carried up. The clang of practiced swords. Robert would be drilling with his squires and shouting insults, pretending to be the man he'd been at 20. She remembered the fury of him in those days, the way his hammer rose and fell, crushing iron. But fury burns, and what burns too long turns to ash. Cersei Lannister would not be ash. She would be gold, untarnished. When the door opened again, it was Jaime who entered, golden hair disheveled from training. Sweat gleamed at his temples. He barred the door behind him and crossed to her in 3 strides. No greeting, only the warmth of his hand on her waist. "Did you speak with him?" she asked. "With the king?" Jaime shrugged. He growled. I parried. I doubt he heard a word. He's restless. Ned Stark fills his ears with duty and debt. Duty. Jaime let the word fall. Stark. She studied her twin. He looked tired too beneath the nonchalance. "We must be wary. We are always wary." Cersei touched his cheek. Jon Arryn pried where he should not. If Robert prays too, we cannot rely on chance to still his tongue. Jaime's gaze flicked to her belly, as though expecting to see children's faces ghosted in the fabric. "What would you have me do?" "Nothing yet. But watch. Listen." His hand tightened on hers. "I won't let them harm you. Or ours." She forced a smile, though her stomach knotted. "I know." In the Godswood, Ned knelt beneath the heart tree, its red leaves trembling like silent testimony. The air beneath its boughs was cool despite the heat beyond the walls. He pressed 2 fingers to the pale bark, felt the rough grooves beneath the sap-like crimson stain. In Winterfell's Godswood, the heart tree's face was carved and wise. Here the face had been hacked away centuries ago, leaving only scars. Yet the old gods lingered in scars as well as smooth wood. He closed his eyes. In the stillness, he heard the quiet rustle of needles, a sound like northern snowfall. He breathed deep. Earth, leaf mold, distant roses. No cry of wolves here, only sparrows. Still, he prayed. When he opened his eyes again, he found Varys standing at the archway, rotund silhouette backlit by sunshine. Ned rose, hand falling to the hilt of ice. The eunuch spread his hands in peace. "Forgive the intrusion, my lord. The Godswood is a sacred respite, even for those who do not share your faith." His voice was soft as always, words dripping as sweetly as honey over warm bread. "You are no worshipper of the old gods," Ned said. "No, my lord. Yet I trust them to keep secrets." Varys stepped forward delicately, robes trailing. "Yes, do you?" Ned regarded him. "Speak plainly." Varys sighed. "Would that I could. Plain speech is oft fatal in this city." He clasped his hands. Jon Arryn died seeking truth. I would not see his fate repeated. He dipped his bald head. "Not for the hand of the king." A chill threaded Ned's spine. "If you have knowledge that bears on the late hand's death, you must share it. With me or with the king. I fear the king's ears may already be filled with other music." Varys' smile was thin. "But I will tell you this. There are those who would profit from silence, and those who would bleed for it. Guard yourself, Lord Stark. The wolves of the north are fierce, but in the south, the lions prowl." Ned's hand tightened on ice pommel. "Is that a threat? A warning?" Varys met his gaze. "The truth Jon Arryn uncovered cost him everything. Tread with care, my lord, Doctor." Before Ned could reply, the eunuch turned and drifted away, robes whispering across the moss. Ned watched him disappear beneath the archway, then looked back to the heart tree, to the ghost of a face long erased. Words formed in his mind unbidden. The seed is strong. He left the Godswood somber, his steps echoing through empty corridors until he reached the Tower of the Hand. Scribes bowed. Servants scurried. In his solar, a stack of vellum awaited his seal. Benjen Stark's latest letter from the wall lay atop. Wildlings stirred. The nights grew colder than they should. Ned touched the wax but did not break it. His thoughts were south, not north. He summoned Tamard and Jory, tasked them to find the king's master armorer, Tabo Mott, and inquire about apprentices of interest. He wrote another note to Sir Harwin in the stables, telling him to keep close watch on every man who entered or left the Red Keep after nightfall. Then he sat before the hearth, though no fire burned, and wondered what price truth demanded. Night fell like ink, spilled across parchment. The city doused its fires slowly. Windows glowed, then winked out. Market stalls became shadows. Tavern doors closed upon the last roar of laughter. Along the street of silk music still drifted, but softer now. The moans of lovers threaded with flute. Robert Baratheon could not sleep. He paced his bedchamber, passing by Cersei's empty side of the great marriage bed. She claimed a headache. Truth be told, Robert was grateful. He'd drunk half a flagon of mulled wine despite Pycelle's warnings, and the taste sat sour in his belly. His hammer leaned against the wall beside his hunting cloak, both untouched since the ride from the Trident 3 moons past. He paused, eye on the hammer's blackened head. How many skulls had it crushed? A score? 100? He could not recall their faces, but he remembered the feel. The jolt up his arms, the reek of blood. Victories, they had called them. What were victories worth now? A knock sounded. Before Robert could bellow, the door creaked open and Ned slipped inside, lantern in hand. Late for visiting, Robert said. Earlier than the dawn. Ned set the lantern on the side table. Its glow painted his features in amber planes, deepening the lines at mouth and brow. Stannis Raven came 2 days past. I asked Varys. He confirmed it. Robert rubbed the heel of his hand over his forehead. Ned. I asked what message Stannis wrote. Ned's voice was soft. He wrote none. The parchment within bore only the sigil of House Arryn. And these words. The seed is strong. Robert felt the wine royal. Jon's words. He said the same to me the night before he took to his bed. I thought, he snorted. I thought he spoke of tournament entrance. He did not. Ned stepped closer. I remember Bran on the parapets at Winterfell, pointing at seeds blown from a thistle. They drifted on the air, white fluff gleaming. Maester Luwin explained that a strong seed breeds true. Robert's pulse hammered. Speak it plain, Ned. I need proof first, Ned said. But you must see the rest of the small council tomorrow. Trust only yourself until then. Robert sagged onto a bench. I have not trusted myself in years. Then, trust me. The king looked up, saw in Ned's eyes the iron of winter. I do. He drew a breath. Bring me proof, and I swear by the 7 I'll heed it. Ned nodded, and left without another word. Robert stared at the closed door, at the lantern's glow flickering on carved wood, and felt a coldness seep through him, deeper than wine could warm. Dawn's first blush found Jory Castle outside Tabomot's forge, the clang of hammer on anvil ringing across the alley. Sparks leapt like fireflies. The master armorer was shaping a breastplate, sweat sluicing from his broad face. He glanced up as Jory approached. Business before sunrise, sir. Jory inclined his head. Lord Stark requests word of your apprentices. Mott's thick brows rose. All of them? Any boys of promise, since last autumn. Mott wiped his brow. There was one, but he left not a month ago. Bastard boy, brown hair, blue eyes, strong in the arm. He pointed toward the river. Down at the street of flour he lodges behind the potter's warehouses. Jory thanked him and strode away to find Tumard waiting with horses. Together, they rode as the city woke. Bakers lit stoves. Fishmongers laid out silver wriggling catches. The scent of bread mixed with river sludge. They found the address. A narrow stone house wedged between storehouses. Inside, a skinny woman scrubbed laundry. She knew the boy. Gendry. His name employed at the forge. But he'd not slept there these 3 nights. Some lord had called for him. She said, eyes round as coins. Jory exchanged a glance with Tumard. They left a silver stag for trouble, and rode back to the Red Keep. Ned listened grimly. Find him, he said, quietly, and bring him to me. As they departed again, Ned turned to the window. Across the inner yard he spied Lancel Lannister guiding King Robert toward the stables for the morning's hunt. Robert's gait was slower than once, but he moved with purpose. Lancel babbled. Robert seemed not to hear. Ned called for his cloak. If the king hunted, the hand would ride beside him. They rode out the Dragon Gate into the countryside, where the orange groves bloomed and the air smelled sweet. Summer grass brushed stirrups, and larks darted overhead. Robert laughed as the hounds bayed, alive at last. Ned kept pace, studying the king's ruddy cheeks, the squint of his eyes as sun glared off polished armor. Renly, Ser Barristan, and a dozen guards followed. When a fox broke from cover, Robert spurred forward, horn blowing. Ned rode behind, but his mind tracked a different quarry. At midday they paused to water horses by a stream. Robert knelt, scooped water to his lips, and looked across at Ned. Silence, stretched until only birdsong remained. "You have the look of Jon Arryn about you," Robert said. "I was his ward. And his friend." Robert's gaze hardened. "If his death was no fever, I want the head of the man who dealt the blow." Ned met his eyes. "Then steel yourself." Robert straightened. "Steel is all I have left." They spoke no more of it on the ride back. By dusk, the Red Keep loomed crimson against a violet sky. Torches flared along battlements. Ned dismounted stiffly. His bones were older than when he'd ridden to war with Robert, but the weight in his heart was heavier still. In the courtyard, Jory waited beside a stocky youth with sweat-dark hair and wary eyes. Gendry. Ned saw it at once. The brow, the jaw, the look of stubborn pride. He had seen that face younger, raised aloft on pikes after the Trident. Black-haired boys dead for the sin of dragon blood. But this boy was kin not to dragon but to stag. "Come with me," Ned told him. In the Tower of the Hand, they sat alone. Gendry's hands clenched on knees. He glanced about, seeing tapestries, shelves of leather-bound ledgers, the direwolf banner above the hearth. Ned spoke gently. "Your mother, what did she look like?" "Brown hair," the boy muttered. "Eyes like mine." "She worked a tavern in Flea Bottom. Did she ever speak of your father?" Gendry shook his head. "Never knew him." Ned leaned back. A long breath flowed from his lungs. "Seeds. 1. True seeds." He penned a note for the king and sealed it. Outside, Jory waited. "Guard the boy. No one sees him save the king and myself." Jory nodded. "As you command, my lord." Near the hour of the wolf, Ned climbed the stairs to Robert's solar. A torch guttered outside, its smoke curling. Guards let him pass. Robert sat at a heavy oak table, a map unrolled before him. Beside it lay the unopened letter marked with Stannis' seal. Candles ringed the table like weary courtiers. Robert lifted his head as Ned entered. In his eyes Ned saw fear, real and naked. Ned set Gendry's lineage parchment down beside the letter. "Open them both. They speak the same truth." Robert's hands trembled as they broke Stannis' seal. He read it in silence. Then he read Ned's parchment. A sound escaped him, half snarl, half sob. He looked up. Candlelight trembled on his beard. "Mine," he whispered. "That boy, mine. Your seed is strong." Ned's voice cracked. "Look at him and know." Robert rose, chair scraping stone. He crossed to the window and braced his hands on the sill, shoulders shaking. "Gods forgive me." His breath fogged a glass. "I trusted her." Ned moved to his side. "You were betrayed. What would you have me do?" Robert turned, and now rage warred with grief in his eyes. "Hair. The children. They are innocent. They're mine. Innocent. Dot." Ned thought of Bran's small hand in his, of Sansa's bright laugh. The children bear no blame. But the throne. "The throne?" Robert spat. "Damn the throne." He paced, fists clenched. "I swore to love them as mine. I swore. 7 hells." He thumped his chest. "Ned, I am not the man I was. I cannot. I won't slaughter babes. No one asks it of you." Robert halted. "Stannis will. He is rightful heir if Joffrey is not. He will want them dead to silence all doubt. Stannis is a hard man, but not cruel. You forget Dragonstone, my friend. He remembers how bastards rose against us before. Nez and I." Ned looked to the map. The lines of rivers and roads. The names of keeps he had bled for. There may be another way. Robert's laugh was hollow. "There's always another way with you. Honor over strength." "Honor is strength," Ned said softly. Robert sank into a chair. I must think. Gods, give me time. You have it, Ned promised. But not much. Robert closed his eyes. Ned left him there, candle flames wavering as though uncertain which way the wind would blow. Time in King's Landing was a coin spent faster than minted. 3 days passed, and the city prepared for the Hands tourney. Lists hung on the gatehouse, hawkers selling wooden hammers for children and wolf-head pins for the northern lords. Yet beneath the gaiety shadows lengthened. Cersei sensed it first. Robert's eyes avoided hers. When he spoke it was clipped. At table he drank little. One night, as she reached to pour for him, he caught her wrist and held it. His grip was not bruising, but the steel beneath stunned her. His gaze measured, cold, and something inside her quailed. He released her without a word and left the hall. She found Jaime the next morning in the White Sword Tower. He knows, she said. Jaime wiped oil from his sword. You're certain? She told him of the look. Jaime's face tightened. Then we act first. How? There's no battlefield here, brother. There can be. Jaime sheathed the sword. Joffrey is heir. Robert cannot move against his own blood without losing the realm's love. We must remind him of that. Cersei thought of Joffrey's chin, lifted in contempt, of Tommen's soft smile, of Myrcella's gentle hands. Then let us show him his children. Robert stood on the balcony of Maegor's Holdfast, watching training in the yard below. Joffrey strutted in gilded mail, thrusting at a practice pell while Sandor Clegane barked orders. Tommen tried to imitate his brother, clumsy, but earnest. Myrcella sat demurely with Septim Ordain, applauding each strike. Cersei appeared, a vision in emerald silk, and placed a hand on Joffrey's shoulder. The boy beamed up at his mother. Robert gripped the stone rail. Beside him Ned waited, silent. Look at them, Robert murmured. Could lies birth such faces? Ned followed his gaze. Joffrey's smile faltered, as Sandor corrected his stance with a shove. Tommen giggled. Myrcella whispered encouragement. They were like any children, unaware of storms overhead. I love them, Robert said. You still may, Ned replied. But the realm be damned. Robert's voice shook. I want them safe. All of them. Ned spoke no judgment, only reminder. Others will not be so kind. Robert closed his eyes. Then I will be king again. He straightened. Gather the small council. Tonight. Melvisen. The council assembled as dusk bled crimson through lattice windows. Cersei arrived last, gold hair haloed by candlelight. Robert remained standing at the head of the table, hands flat on wood. His eyes swept them. My lords, he began. My lady. Treason festers in my halls. I have proof in my hands, yet proof can be a sword with two edges. He paused. I have decided. The Hands tourney will proceed, but as celebration of a new decree. From this day, the bastardy of any child born of noble blood may be legitimated by royal proclamation, should the king see fit. His gaze flicked to Ned, then to Cersei. And I see fit. Murmurs rippled. Cersei's smile froze, eyes narrowing. What means this, husband? It means, Robert said, voice clear, that should any truth arise calling into question my line, I alone shall deem what blood is true. Understand me well, my judgment is law. Littlefinger's quill scratched, eyes bright. Pycelle blinked in confusion. Renly looked startled, very serene. Cersei found her voice. You would break centuries of custom. I broke a dragon once. Robert's smile was thin. Custom can crack as easily. Ned spoke then, calm. The realm may accept such a decree if assured it prevents bloodshed. Robert nodded. There will be no blood. Any who draw blades on this matter will answer to me. Cersei's jaw clenched. And what of the queen's honor? Honor, nar? Robert's laugh echoed. A thin thing to gamble children's lives upon. Your place is secure, Cersei. You are queen still. He leaned forward. But hear me. Cross me in this, and I will show you the iron beneath the velvet. Cersei's eyes blazed. Yet she dipped her head. As you command, "Your Grace." Robert dismissed them. As chairs scraped and courtiers filed out, Ned lingered. Robert slumped once the doors closed. "Is it done?" he asked. "Not yet." Ned laid a hand on his shoulder. "But it begins." Robert looked up, weary. "Spare Ned. You once told me at Gulltown, when I would have stormed the gates. I spared him then. I spare him now." Ned frowned. "Spare who?" Robert smiled faintly. "The man I was, swinging hammers, deaf to counsel. I'll spare us both." In her chamber, Cersei hurled a goblet against the wall. Wine spattered tapestries. Jaime caught her wrists, pulled her close. "He humiliates me," she hissed. "He means to parade his bastards, make me nurse them beside mine. Then we won't allow it." "How?" Her voice broke. "He is king." Jaime's green eyes hardened. "Kings can die." She stared, breath hitching. "Say it." Jaime whispered. "You've thought it too." She closed her eyes, felt tears sting. "We would need care. And speed." "No." "Essa. I have care." Jaime's hand brushed her cheek. "And my sword is swift." She opened her eyes. "You swear." "On the lives of our children." Cersei nodded. The die was cast. That night Ned wrote a letter north sealed with direwolf wax. To Catelyn, urging caution, detailing none of the danger but requesting she hold the children close. Another letter he penned to Stannis on Dragonstone, bidding him come to King's Landing under Robert's protection. He could not know if the raven would fly swift enough. When he snuffed the candle, he dreamed of a weirwood bleeding in the snow, and of seeds scattered on a dark wind. Sunlight broke over King's Landing like a blade drawn from sheath. The day of the tourney dawned bright, wind off the bay cooling the stands as lords and ladies gathered. Banners snapped. Baratheon stag, Lannister lion, Tyrell rose, Stark direwolf. Trumpets blared. Robert sat the royal box, crown gleaming. Cersei beside him. Smile a mask. Joffrey preened at her right hand, Tommen munching honeyed locusts, Myrcella watching the color of the knights' cloaks with delight. Ned stood at the king's left, eyes scanning crowds for shadows. Ser Barristan watched too, white cloak pristine. Below, knights took the field. The mountain towered, armor dark. Loras Tyrell rode in green and gold. The jousts began, lances shattering, crowds roaring. Robert cheered, though his voice rang more muted than once. When Lancel offered wine, Robert waved him off, reached for water instead. Cersei's brows lifted. Midday approached. The stands simmered with heat and noise. Ned felt unease coil within. Too many smiles, too many hands clutching cups. He watched Cersei's gaze flick toward Jaime, who sat with the Kingsguard below. Jaime nodded. Almost imperceptible. Ned's grip tightened on the railing. He turned to Robert. "My king, you must leave the box." Robert laughed. "And miss the tilt?" "Humor me." But Robert shook his head. "Not today, Ned." Below, the next two riders thundered forward. A lance shattered, splinters flying. For a breath, all eyes followed the fall. Ned sensed movement, Jaime rising, hand on hilt, striding toward the stair that led up. Ice hissed free as Ned blocked the path. Jaime halted, eyes bright as glass. "Out of the way, Stark." Ned's voice was low. "Not another step." "My oath is to protect the king," Jaime said. "And mine," Ned replied. Steel whispered as Jaime drew. White cloaks stirred. The crowd's roar faded into a hush that rushed in Ned's ears like the sea. Above, Robert stood, confused, half risen. "Jaime," he called, and the storm, long gathering, broke. 6,050 words. "Gay." Jaime's sword left the scabbard with a hiss like a drawn breath in a crypt. Ned felt the bright noon dazzle on its edge an instant before instinct lowered ice to meet it. Steel ringing off steel. The clash cracked across the tier of nobles like thunder splitting calm skies. Cheers that had moments ago chased splintering lances collapsed into startled silence. A shower of startled doves erupted from the rafters of the royal box, beating white wings against the gold and crimson awnings as if trying to carry the moment aloft and away. Ice weighed heavy in Ned's grasp. Two-handed, northern-forged, a broad-long greatsword meant for verdicts, not tourneys. Jaime's blade was a song of Southron steel, light enough for a dancer's wrist, deadly enough for kings. Ned set his stance square and still, boots anchored to oak planks slick with the spilt mead of revelers. Jaime advanced with the hard smile he wore in every tale the bards ever told. The smile of a man, born to a perfect stroke. Steel found steel again. Sparks spat between them. From far below, the jousting field lay forgotten. A spilled paint swirl of broken tilts and trampled pennons. But the crowd's eyes clung to the white cloak and the gray cloak, to gold hair and iron resolve, to the place where two stories crashed and neither would yield. "My vow is to shield the king," Jaime murmured, their faces so near that Ned could smell sweat and the faint cedar oil Jaime used to polish his breastplate. "Step aside, Stark." "Your vow," Ned answered, "is what you make it." Another bind of blades. "Tell me, was it vow or whim had you sheathed that dagger in an heiress's back?" Jaime's grin tightened until it showed teeth. He feinted high, cut low, trying ice's length. Ned moved with him, slower but sure, meeting every serpent's flick with a wall. Around them, courtiers scattered. Lord Tarley dragged his plump boy, Samwell, backward by the collar. Lady Merryweather lifted her skirts and fled, squealing. The blue bard of High Heart scrambled beneath a bench, lute clutched like a shield. On the benches across the aisle, Cersei watched, face whiter than her pearls, mouth a pinched line of dread and calculation. She looked once toward Joffrey, who stood frozen, small fists curled on the rail, Tommen wide-eyed at his brother's side, Myrcella pressing a kerchief to her lips. Then Cersei's gaze swung to Robert. The king had shoved to his feet when first he saw steel flash. Now he half leaned over the carved railing, vast shoulders braced, hands white on the cedar. No hammer swung in those fists. The iron that once toppled princes lay somewhere in Storm's End's dusty vault. Instead, Robert had only voice and fury. "Jaime," he bellowed. "Ned. 7 hells. Sheathe those bloody things." But the crowd's roar, swelling again as they fathomed what duel unfolded, swallowed the command. Horns brayed out on the lists, knights banged shields to drown the confusion. Squires shouted warnings in a dozen tongues. The Red Keep's guards fought to reach the staircase, their mail a jostled tide. Yet at the top of the narrow stair 2 pale-cloaked Kingsguard held fast, blades crossed to bar them. Ser Merin trant port, Ser Boros blount. Petinigi liashern seu tim dihyadi tedund. Both wore the lion stamped on their sword belts. Time turned sluggish, each breath thick as honeyed wine. Rain of dust sifted from beams above every time ice struck Jaime's parry. Ned felt the tremor in wrists long healed from tourney breaks, the ache blossoming in scars earned far from southern heat. Jaime circled. Ned pivoted with him, refusing to yield the half-pace that would give the lion's blade his kidney. His cloak snagged on a chair. He wrenched it free. Behind Jaime's left shoulder, beyond the stair, Cersei Lannister reached for a gold-rimmed flagon on the table before Robert, and tipped. Liquid art. Wine dark, rich tuor. One blink later, Robert's goblet cracked against the rail. Its contents spilled toward his breeches. He flinched back, cursing. Cersei's sleeve brushed his, as though a lover's reflex led her to catch the cup. Yet her other hand moved strangely, swift as a viper. Ned's eye flicked over Jaime's guard and saw, for a heartbeat only, Cersei's fingers slide something small and pewter dull into the king's wine as she set the flagon upright again. "Traitor," Ned breathed, but the word was lost in a clang. Jaime's point whistled past his ear, shaved a lock of hair to drift like gray smoke. The lion pressed, shoulders rolling in the rhythm only true swordsmen know, where the blade's edge is an extension of blood and breath. Ned gave ground one step, then another. The planks met stone. Behind him, emptiness. One more retreat, and he would topple from the royal box to the lists below. a fall to break years and bones alike. So he did what northern men do when winter leaves no road forward. He forced his feet into the storm. Jaime's next lunge, he met not by parry, but by closing the distance to fist's breadth. Ice flat slammed the gilded lion helm. Jaime swore, staggering, and Ned twisted, shoulder driving his foe's sword arm wide. They grappled, steel bodies locked, each blade pinned by the other man's limbs. Ned felt Jaime's breath hot on his cheek, smelled mint and smoke. "You loved him once," Ned rasped, meaning the king, the rebel lord with thunder in his laugh. "I loved many things once," Jaime snarled back. Then with shocking speed, he let go his sword, dropped it clanging. His free hand found a dagger at his belt and punched up beneath Ned's gorget. Leather parted, cold kiss of steel at Ned's throat. Now Jaime's voice was soft. "Yield." Ned froze. Sweat stung his eyes. The dagger's edge pricked skin, a dot of warmth sliding down his collar. He tightened knuckles on ice. He heard distantly the pounding of mailed boots on the stairs as Lord Renly forced Tarly's squad through the King's Guard's barricade. But those boots might as well have marched leagues away. Jaime's green eyes held his. "Yield," he said again, quieter, like a plea. Ned searched that gaze and found not gloating, nor the cold madness that had burned in Catelyn's recounting of the boy Bran's fall. He found confusion, pain maybe, behind gold lashes. Pain and a simmering dread. He thought of Cersei's hand slipping something into Robert's cup. Beneath the crown's pomp, webs twitched, and in this instant one thread ran through Jaime Lannister's grip, through the line of the dagger, through Ned's heartbeat, straight to King Robert's life. "I yield." Ned spoke low, but Jaime felt the word in the loosening of shoulders before he heard it. The dagger edged away. Jaime inhaled, tremor rippling. Ned sheathed ice across his back, half turned, palms raised to show peace as guards burst onto the balcony. Tarly thundered first, axe half lifted. Renly behind with a steel-shod spear. Ser Barristan in white armor, expression carved from marble sorrow. "Stand down," Robert roared, his own face mottled crimson. One hand braced on rail, the other clutching the wine cup that Cersei had just refilled. The queen's gold lashes lowered demurely as she stepped aside. The guards checked, some blades still leveled at Jaime, until Ser Barristan raised a gauntlet. By the king's command, Selmy barked. Steel rang retreat into scabbards. Robert glared from one friend to the other. "Gods be good. Two of the best swords in Westeros trying to gut each other like poachers over a hare. Tell me why I ought not hang the pair of you." His words slurred, only slightly, but enough for Ned to see the tilt at the edge of pupils. A flush had crept up Robert's throat, blotching his cheeks beyond the heat of anger. Ned had opened his mouth. Jaime spoke first. "My king, Lord Stark believed me threat enough to draw on." I answered. He bent, to Ned's surprise, took up his dropped sword, knelt, presented hilt first to Robert. "If your grace deems my oath forfeit, claim the blade." Robert looked down at golden hair, the kneeling white cloak. For a breath Ned feared he would do it, would seize the sword and break Jaime's white oath as he had broken the Mad King's. But Robert's eyes slid across the crowded benches, saw lords of Reach and Vale and Dorne watching with thirsty hope for Fisher. Unity was a fiction even at its best. Today, it hung by a fraying thread, and the realm's best hammer no longer had the strength to pound it true. "Keep your steel," Robert muttered. "But cross blades with my hand again, and I'll see how well a Kingslayer flies from the city walls." He flicked a glance at Ned. "And you?" Ned bowed. "I am your man, your grace." He felt blood dampening collar linen, a thin line snaking warm. It stung less than the taste of what he must say next, before the queen poured one more poison, before the threads drew knots too tight. The words formed heavy as shield iron. "My king, you look ill." Robert's laugh was raw. "Do I?" "I feel fine. Finer than I have in months." He tipped back the goblet. Cersei's hand brushed the stem in quiet satisfaction. Ned stepped forward. That wine may be treachery. If silence earlier had seemed solid, now it turned visceral. A hush you could chew. Tension vibrated from slashed tapestries and broken lances, from banners muttering in a wind that no longer cooled. Robert lowered the cup halfway. His gaze fell to Ned's bleeding neck, to the half-raised sword still in wary grips. "You question my lady wife's hospitality?" He smiled, but the smile cut fleshier than a blade. "Have you fallen so far, Eddard, that every cup is poison?" "Not every," Ned said. "Only the one meant to kill." He turned to Cersei and saw her lion gold mask shimmering. "My queen, what did you place in his grace wine?" Cersei flicked dust from her bodice. "A dash of essence of night-blooming starflower, my lord. Pycelle prescribed it himself to calm the king's heart on warm days." "Grand Maester, tell him." Pycelle shuffled forward. Robes a stitched history of forgotten administrations. "Yes, yes," he wheezed, "starflower. A mild soporific, easing the pulse. Quite harmless, my lord hand. The same draught I administered before the king's journey to Winterfell." His look carried hurt at being doubted, but deeper Ned read complicity or cowardice. He had not the leisure to sort which. Robert drained the cup in a growl. "There. Settled." He flung goblet to cushions. "Now call me another tilt. Sir Loras against Sir Elin. I want heads rung like bells." He sagged back onto the carved seat. A king returned to ritual because ritual asked nothing but watchfulness. His chest rose uneven, sweat sheened brow. The soporific, if it was merely that, began its work. A glaze dulled eyes that once blazed with dawn's fire. Cersei leaned to stroke his arm. "Rest, my love. Leave the lists to Joffrey." The boy puffed tall. "I shall command the next matches," he announced, voice cracking only once. Cheers rose obediently from sections seated with Lannister coin. Squires hauled fresh lances. Knights reset helms. By collective pretense, the court resumed its tourney while tension bled into the ground. Ned let the maesters fuss with linen at his throat. But his gaze held the queen, her sons, the king's guard. In Jaime's brief nod he read a promise half fulfilled, half dissolved, as fragile as the peacekeeping steel from Robert's ribs. Renly approached. "Brother, you look ready to bite iron. Come, walk with me, cool the blood." Ned started to refuse, but realized Renly's eyes kept flicking to Cersei. The young Baratheon prince wanted distance for private counsel. Ned allowed himself to be drawn toward the stair. When they reached the shaded arch behind Stan's, Renly exhaled. Madness. Jaime unsheathes in the royal box. What shadow stirred that storm? Wow. Swords were the least of it. Ned wiped sweat, wine and blood from collar. Someone aims to unseat the king by silence first. That cup. Renly made a face. Night-blooming starflower, Pycelle's favorite singing tonic. He's poured it for me after fevers. Cersei did not lie. The stuff just slows the heart and draws sleep. Enough sleep, a slow heart. An easy victim. Ned stared across the open courtyard to the king's box where Robert now slumped heavy in his seat, eyelids fluttering with each huzzah Joffrey called for. Essence can turn deadly if the dose doubles. Renly's expression darkened. And who would know the line between pacifying and poisoning? Someone with a maester's bottles, or a queen's reach. He touched Ned's elbow, lowered his voice further. "My brother is in peril. Yet Jaime will not act without her word. We saw that." He hesitated. "The realm will not love a Lannister coup, but they might accept an accident. Boar hunt, perhaps, such as the one planned on the morrow. A stag gored in woods is a tidier tale than a king crumpled in his cup." Renly's jaw set. "We must keep him in the castle." Ned thought of Robert strapped into a saddle, swilling wine while horns drove tusk death at him through brush. The memory of a different hunt. Rhaegar across the trident, ruby light flashing, stabbed like ice. "I'll forbid the hunt. Better his wrath than a widow's crown on Cersei's head." Renly's hand squeezed his arm. "Do it." Then he glanced down the corridor, ensuring no prying ears. "Eddard, if the worst comes, Storm's End will stand by you. Remember that." Ned nodded once. "My thanks." They parted. Ned wound through lesser corridors toward Maegor's Holdfast where ravens stirred in their rookery, and where Stannis' sealed response, if any, might already cool in shadow. He climbed spiral steps glossy with torch soot. Tamard waited outside his solar. Gendry's secured, my lord. Jory has 3 men in the room, 2 by the door. Ned gestured for quiet, taking parchment from table. Stannis ink glared black beneath a glob of sealing wax stamped with the crowned stag over fiery heart. Devos craft, not the Baratheon crown. Ned slid it. Lord Stark, your first letter reached me through channels untrusted. I come nonetheless, for truth will outlive castles. My galley made of the wind should make Blackwater 3 days hence on the evening tide. I travel in secrecy with trusted men. Prepare honest ground or prepare war. There is for me no third road. Stannis Baratheon. 3 days. Ned folded the letter, mind racing across chessboard crowns. 3 days to keep Robert breathing. 3 days to outplay lions that had held the board for years. He sent Tamard to double the guard on Robert's chambers, to taste every cup, every spoonful. Then he sat, elbows on knees, and buried face in hands. Sleep did not claim him that night. Not even the Queen's soporific could have found passage through the iron bars of duty beating in his skull. Before dawn, he donned plain leather instead of court velvet, strapped ice across back, and descended to the king's apartments. Lancel greeted him outside bedchamber, eyes bleary. The king rests, my lord hand. Doctor's orders. Will rise for hunt in 2 hours. The hunt is cancelled, Ned announced. But, by my word as hand, tell him when he wakes. Lancel bit his lip. He may not accept that kindly. He will, if you value your ears. Ned swung doors open. Inside, the massive bed seemed small beneath Robert's girth. Brown wine stains marred the coverlet where a goblet had been toppled. Robert snored, lips slack. Cersei sat in a carved chair near hearth, hair undone to thick gold ropes down her chemise. She looked up as Ned entered, surprise quickly masked. My queen, he said, voice low. I must speak with the king alone. The king sleeps. He can wake. Ned strode forward. Cersei rose to block him. He stopped an arm's length away, careful not to tower. Spare us the dance, Cersei. He used her name purposefully. Stripping title. I know. Color leached from her cheeks, then rushed back hotter. You know nothing. I know seed breeds true. Black of hair, as Baratheon as storm clouds. Your children are golden. Her chin lifted. And who will believe you? A sour northern lord over their own eyes. The realm sees Baratheon crowns on their heads. The realm will see a parchment bearing Robert's own seal. Ned watched her eyes for flicker. They did not. So she had not learned of Robert's decree, at least not fully. Careful, he warned himself. Denial will not save them. You speak of saving? You asked the king to taste treachery and wine poured by his queen. Her voice trembled just enough to betray rage. You would unmask a lie and damn thousands to war. Is that honor? The war already waits. Your brother's ready it. She paced 2 steps, stopped at Robert's bedside. Lantern light brushed her profile. In that moment, Ned glimpsed the girl she'd once been. Proud, frightened, hungry for power because only power would keep the world from chewing her as it chewed so many women. Yet pity found no purchase. Too many lay cold for her choices. You could have joined us, she whispered. You could have worn the cloak of friendship and ruled beside us all. Instead, you clutch at a leper's mantle of duty. She moved a strand of hair from Robert's sleeping brow almost tenderly. You will lose. The game was played before you arrived. Not yet. Ned stepped back toward door. Your Grace, tell the king his hunt waits a kinder season. This day he rests. He left her there, moonlight cresting new dawn through window slats like bars across both their fates. In corridor he found Ser Barristan. The old knight's face carved deeper lines every hour. Lord Hand, he greeted. I stand watch. The white sword never left his grip. I place my trust in you, sir, Ned said. Let none approach with open blades, or closed cups. Barristan's eyes flickered, but he bowed. Word of the cancelled hunt spread faster than spring fever. It soured Robert's mood when at last he woke near midday. So Lancel reported, yet the Starflower still fuddled him. His tirade drifted from fury to drowsy complaint, then to a nostalgic telling of how he once slew a giant boar in the Kingswood. with only a dirk. Cersei soothed him with cool cloth, and they remained cloistered. Ned spent the afternoon in the Tower of the Hand drafting orders. One raven sped to Winterfell with fresh plea for caution. One to River Run seeking Hoster Tully's sworn aid should the crown fracture. One to the Eyrie where Lysa's ear might yet embrace reason if letter bore Joan's ghost in Ned's council. He sent trusted riders to secure city gates, to instruct the Gold Cloak's commander, Janos Slynt, to admit no knightly retinue greater than 20 men until further notice. Whether Slynt bowed to coin or crown remained a question. Ned prayed his pouch today jingled louder. Toward dusk he answered a knock to find Renly pacing. Your abrupt dismissal of the hunt has courtiers whispering the hand usurps the king's pleasures. Let them whisper. Ned shoved parchment aside. Renly planted hands on hips. I've arranged private guard to meet Stannis' galley at the quays on the second dusk. We'll ferry them upriver under cover of a linen shipment. Best if you know the Lord of Dragonstone rides in. His mouth twisted. Though I doubt Stannis enjoys ruses. Hell learned to. Ned tapped Will. Your loyalty honors your house. Well. Renly hesitated. The game may turn uglier before he arrives. Joffrey preens on every step, calling himself regent while the king naps. Cersei fans it. I fear they will move. Thou. Let them move, Ned said, though his stomach clenched. We shall be stone. Night fell. Ned dined on bread, onions, and salt beef delivered by Jory. He ate absent-mindedly, rereading Stannis' letter. He thought of honorable men and how many stones the game might grind to sand. Then horn blasts called curfew. Torches mirrored on Blackwater like smears of molten copper. He allowed himself 5 hours of dream-streaked sleep, jaws clenched around names he could not say. Dawn roused him to commotion. Ravens screeching above towers, bells clanging portside. He threw cloak over shoulder and strode onto balcony. In the purpling east the river churned under oar lines. Dozens of barges, far more than morning markets required. Sails bore crimson lions rampant. A parade where coin replaced velvet hush. Cannon bark voice echoed behind him. Lord Hand. Janos Slynt arrived with breath-fogging chill air despite summer. Message from the Queen. Her Grace has invited the good folk of Lannisport, newly landed, to witness today's tourney finals. And how many good folk? Ned asked without turning. Near 1,000. Slynt sniffed. Mostly men-at-arms, though they dress as merchants. 1,000. Ned absorbed weight. We denied large retinues, Ser Janos. Slynt bristled. Not to the Queen's party, my lord. Royal prerogative. Her seal. He produced scroll. Ned took it, broke wax. Cersei's flowing script declared the Queen's guard for her children's safety amid crowds. Official, legal, circumventing his order like water round rock. Beneath Pycelle's counter-seal, he dismissed Slynt, then stood long at balustrade watching lion banners snake through city gates. Day 2 of the tourney would be more than sport. He armored for battle, though no trumpet called. When he reached the king's box an hour later, bobbing head of every Lannister uncle, cousin Bannerman filled tiers below. Jaime had resumed white cloak, but lion surcoat too hung beneath, and crowd cheered each flourish of his sword as he practiced cuts for exhibition. Knights of Storm's End were outnumbered 10-1 beside those of Casterly Rock. Still, Renly sat composed, emerald cloak pinned by stag brooch of crystal. Robert entered last, shambling, eyes sunken yet fever bright. Cersei leaned on his arm. The king greeted cheers with half-hearted wave, collapsed to cushioned throne. Ned observed the way Robert's breathing whistled. Pycelle hovered with vial already in hand. The maester caught Ned's stare, twitched, bowed, shuffled back. The horn for first tilt sounded. Sir Horace red wine. Unhorsed Sir Robar Royce to modest acclaim. Children hawked sweetgrass candy. Small folk chanted, Joffrey! Joffrey! Led by men in Lannister red. Mid-afternoon heat warped air. Ned's gaze flicked constant across Queen, Maester, King Chore. Robert drained 2 cups of starflower-laced wine. His eyelids drooped. When Sir Loras Esquire badgered Renly to sponsor odds, Renly declined with icy courtesy. Jaime won his bout, riding circular past to salute Queen and children. Cersei smiled in benediction while Robert dozed. In that softness Ned sensed the knife. He moved to Robert's side. "Your Grace, come, the sun is cruel. Let us take you to cool chambers." Robert waved groggily. Just a few more." Head lolled. He tried to rise, veiled, slumped. Joffrey rose. "Mother, father is unwell." Cersei laid hand on Robert's brow. Feigned worry. "Grand Maester, more tincture." Ned caught her wrist. "Enough." Their eyes clashed. She did not blink. Ser Barristan stepped near. "My lord hand, restrain." Ned ignored him. "We end this farce." He tugged bell rope for Harold. The sound pealed across grounds. Cheers faltered. Ned addressed the crowd, voice amplified by wind on steel. "The king is unwell. The finals will resume on the morrow." Murmurs surged. Lannister men booed. Jaime rode closer, visor lifted. "You overstep." Ned scanned seats. Guards loyal to Stark, to Baratheon, to scattershot. Lannister arms clustered like pack. Still, he must risk. He turned. Renly, escort his grace to Maegor's holdfast. "Ser Barristan with me." As they lifted Robert, the king muttered confusion, half protest, but followed. Cersei seized Ned's elbow. "You think to steal him? To save him?" "Save?" She leaned near. "You cannot save what is already mine." Then came the shriek. Across the field, a lion banner bearer toppled, arrow jutting from throat. Chaos broke as bowmen unseen along parapets loosed second, third shafts. Panic stormed benches. Knights vaulted rails, either to defend or to flee. Ned spotted archers robed in Lannister crimson blend into press. Renly's guards formed shield wall round King. Barristan flung white cloak across Robert as arrows thudded. Cersei vanished behind Twin King's guard. Jaime kicked destrier, spurring toward box sword raised. Some to think defend, some condemn. Ice cleared scabbard once more. Ned and Barristan marched King toward keep door at rear of box, as arrows hissed overhead. Peasants trampled each other. Smoke bloomed from overturned brazier, catching pennons aflame. Down corridors they bore Robert, feet dragging. Pycelle waddled gasping. Starflower vial still clutched. They burst into shadowed hall where gold cloaks waited. Janos slint again. He saluted Renly. "Lord Hand." Halls secured. "Good." Ned glanced behind. No arrows, only echo of riot. Yet among Slint's men he spied new faces. Mercenaries? None wore house colors. All bore gold pendants lion-shaped. Renly saw too. Hand drifted to dagger. "Captain? You were instructed to station familiar watch." Slint smiled thin. "Change of plan." "Her Grace sends her protection." He signaled. Steel rasped. Barristan barely swung shield as first spear jabbed. Renly's dagger licked out. Slit a throat before he could draw sword. The corridor erupted. Ned shoved Robert behind pillar, stepped into fray. Ice whirled. Heavy cleaver carving arcs too wide for tight space. Even so he found meat, arm, thigh, shoulder. Barristan fought back to back with Renly in deadly grace of years honed. Slint barked orders, retreated behind men swinging halberds tipped in iron. Ned parried, swept foot, cracked kneecap, man collapsed screaming. Yet they kept coming. A mace struck Robert's skull. No. Barristan caught it seconds before heft. Still Robert sagged dizzier. Ned realized starflower in his veins turned the king a stumbling weight. More soldiers flooded hall. Ned counted 30. He had with him 8. Tally spelled doom. "Back!" he shouted. They retreated toward stair. Ice bathed in scarlet flickers. Arrows clattered stone from archers posted where passage bent. One grazed Barristan's pauldrons. Renly took Robert's arm. Maegor's chapel. Steel doors. They rushed down narrow side passage Barristan remembered from Aerys' time. but a head gate already barred by 2 Lannister guards holding crossbows. Ned cursed, sought alternate route, found none. Surrounded, he looked to Renly, Barristan. Even honor could not win a slaughter pen. Into that tightening vice rolled thunder of new boots, the clank of mailed greaves, a cry half warhorn, half wolf howl. From stairs on left, Jory Castle charged, Longclaw raised. Behind him, Northmen sworn to Winterfell, and a knot of Storm's End men in blue and gold. Battle crashed anew, now 2 tides colliding. Hall filled with din, swords on shields, men screaming. Ned fought alongside Jory, back to back, father and vassal. He saw Tomard tackle Archer, slam skull to wall. Pip Lowther took bolt through gut, yet kept swinging axe until 2 foes lay breathing dust beside him. At Corridor's heart, Slint confronted Renly. Captain's halberd swept, Renly parried riposted, steel scored mail. Slint cursed, retreated toward Queen's knights as wolves advanced. Momentum turned. Lannister lines broke. Many fled. Some surrendered when helmed Northmen ringed them. Arrow's fledging lion crest fell silent. When last clang faded, floor lay strewn with groaning men. Smoke smell, copper of blood. Robert leaned slumped against pillar, eyelids flicking like moth wings. Ned hurried to him. "Your Grace, stay. Healers come." Robert tried a smile. "I vive. Had worse, under a woman's thighs." Then he coughed. Ragged, crimson flecks at corner of lips. Ned's heart chilled. Not starflower. Something else. Poison or spear bruise? He saw no wound. Pycelle knelt, pressed fingers to Robert's neck. The pulse falters. He rummaged pouch. Ned grabbed wrist. "What brew now, maester?" "Milk of poppy, for pain." Ned thrust it away. "No, no drafts." He motioned Renly. "Help me carry him." They bore Robert toward chapel. Every step he groaned, breath wetter. At last inside, heavy oak barred. Candlelight flickered over icons of 7. White marble mother watched the scene with stone pity. Ned laid the king on altar carpet. Renly knelt weeping. Barristan removed gauntlets, pressed cloth to mouth. Pycelle tore Robert's doublet lace, revealing torso marbled with purple blotches, spreading like spilt wine across ribs. "The starflower," Pycelle whispered in terror. "Someone, concentrate, tenfold, Araros root within." "Oh gods!" He fumbled vials. Ned realized then. The wine each cup disguised new dose. Starflower overdosed swells, vessels, floods lungs. Robert drowned inside. He seized Pycelle's collar. "Antidote? I need widow's blood. Ground amaranth. Ours he has not." Robert's eyes opened, clearer for last flash. "Ned, hear me." Blood bubbled. "Guard the children." Ned grasped his hand. "I will. Yours and mine." Robert's grip tightened, shook with fury at own failing flesh. "Promise, do not let them spill." Thunder rumbled beyond chapel windows as if heavens mocked. "Spare Ned." The king's lips quirked. Last jest or last wish Ned could not tell. "I swear by ice and fire," Ned said. The king exhaled, did not draw again. Renly bowed head. Barristan covered face with gauntlet. Pycelle whimpered prayer. Outside chapel, horns blared in alarm. The city sensed its sun extinguish. Ned closed Robert's lids. Memory of young lord on warhorse, hammer high, roared in ears. "Rise now, moon of Westeros," he murmured. "We ride a darker night." Footsteps pounded beyond door. Jory peeked in. "My lord, news, Queen's men seize armory gatehouse. Jaime commands." He saw Robert's still form. Swallowed. "What orders?" Ned rose, ice tip touching stone. The sword felt suddenly heavier, as if every oath it had delivered now weighed in his arm. "We proclaim truth," he said. "Robert Baratheon is dead. His lawful heir." He hesitated, thinking of golden heads. Black-haired bastards, Stannis on the tide. Thought a promise to spare children, a vow to truth. His lawful heir is Lord Stannis. Renly looked up, eyes wet. You name Stannis over Joffrey. I name the realm's salvation. Ned clenched jaw. Gather lords still loyal. We hold the keep until Stannis arrives. Jory rushed. Barristan lowered hand. Sir Jaime will contest, he warned. He will, Ned agreed. And Cersei will crown her son before sunset. He sheathed ice, turned to Renly. Get word to Storm's End riders. Tell them hold the river and close the Roserad. No Lannister host crosses into Crownlands unchallenged. Renly nodded. Fled. To Barristan. Sir, you have served 2 kings betrayed by those sworn protect. Stand with me. Barristan straightened. I will. To Jory. Secure Gendry. He must live. My lady and children too. Jory saluted. Pycelle hovered. Lord Hand, by law, the small council must still advise. Enough councils. The king is dead, poisoned by treason. Maester, collect your ledgers. Tonight we write a new law. He strode to door, flung it wide. Lightning forked beyond arched windows, throwing stark light across corridor cluttered with bodies. The storm outside finally broke. Rain drumming redstone, washing dried blood in rivulets already. The city of King's Landing shuddered beneath the first true tempest since the dragons died. Ned Stark stepped into it, every bootfall echoing the promise he had given a dying brother, and the cost that promise would levy. 2 halls away, in a secret stair spiraling behind the throne room's dais, Varys listened to distant thunder and whispered sibilant lament. The drums begin, the spider told quiet stone. His hands fluttered like frail doves before folding in robe sleeves. We spin, lest we be crushed. He descended toward black cells where shadows kept deepest counsel, thoughts already weaving next thread, because the Game of Thrones required no rest, only players. The most patient spider in the 7 kingdoms smiled thin under torch glow, for the board had at last cleared, and new pieces waited. Above, bolts slammed into the tower, locking a city into war with itself while sea tides hissed at its gates, bearing a stern lord named Stannis, and across farther seas, perhaps a girl queen with dragons yet still unborn. But for now, the storm belonged to lions and wolves, and Ned Stark, sworn to spare blood yet armed with truth's sword, marched to meet the lion's roar. 5 hours of night still before first dawn without a king. Outside Storm's End banners lifted to wind, pinkened by unseen sunrise. Somewhere in Flea Bottom, a black-haired boy named Gendry dreamed of steel and antler helms, unaware the mantle of princes hovered near a sweat upon his brow. And on a tower of the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister tightened a new forged crown on her son's golden curls, breakfasting on the thunder that made other women shake. The world turned its great wheel, one more spoke, grinding oaths and crowns beneath weight of time. And in that grinding, all men would learn whether Ned Stark's mercy could outmatch Cersei's ruthlessness, whether a kingdom could be saved by truth, or whether all seeds, strong or golden, would be buried beneath the iron harvest of war. K.K. Ned strode from the chapel into corridors where torches hissed their resinous protest at the rain crashing outside. He tried to quell the iron ringing in his ears, the aftershock of battle, the echo of Robert's last rattled breath. Yet every clatter of a distant door made him tighten his fist on Ice's pommel. The sword felt heavier than when it had been forged. Grief and promise dulled no edge, but they loaded the hilt with weight a smith could never measure. He caught the sleeve of a passing page. "Find Sir Barristan," he said. "Tell him the hand commands the throne room cleared, every entrance barred. Then, fetch Lord Renly." The boy bobbed, wide-eyed, and sprinted away, slippers slapping puddled stone. Jory emerged from a side hall, his left pauldron dented, the blood on his brow half washed away by sweat. The queen flees for Maegor's tower. Jaime's escorting her with 2 score. He left twice that number to hold the armory. "How many stand for us?" 36 Northmen still sound, Jory said. Another 20 from Storm's End. A handful of gold cloaks Slint didn't drag to heal, and Gendry's under guard in the stable loft. Boys cursing he missed the melee. Keep him cursing, Ned muttered. Alive and angry is better than dead and quiet. They crossed beneath a stained glass barrel vault, where rain hammered so hard the colored panes trembled in their lead. Lamps cast bleeding rainbows over the puddles. Ned's boots splashed through red, then green, then blue. The keep itself seemed to pulse like a wounded beast, light and shadow throbbing with each gust outside. Down the long spine corridor to the throne room, the noise changed. No longer only the storm, but a guttural murmur of men, iron, uncertainty. Barristan met them at the high doors. Visor up, white hair plastered to his cheeks by drizzle swept in through arrow slits. Behind him, two of Renly's retainers dragged the last unconscious Lannister sentry into a recess. Room secured for the moment, the old knight reported. I pray to hear your plan, my lord. The queen has wasted no time naming us traitors. She summoned the small council to her own chambers, without you. Shall crown Joffrey at first bell, Ned answered. We must light truth faster than her lie. He pushed the door. The hall of the Iron Throne waited like a cavern. Candles guttered beneath the yawning roof. Iron blades and melted spearheads glimmered in their thousand twisted shapes. The throne itself loomed at the far dais, a chaos of steel held together by nothing kinder than will. Raindrops drifted from the open clerestories high above, pattering on the blades like scant applause. Ned felt them cold on his hair as he walked the center aisle. Only 3 figures stirred within. Renly pacing sharp circles before the dais. Varys serene as a silk pillow, perched on the lowest step, and at Varys' shoulder, Littlefinger spinning a dagger by its point, the way a juggler spins an apple. Pedder's gray-green eyes brightened when Ned approached, as though the arrival of fresh game delighted a bored cat. My lords, Littlefinger chirped, King Robert's death saddens every heart, yet see, his throne awaits a swift occupant. Delay invites chaos. A convenient observation, Ned said, from a man who profits on chaos. Profit? Littlefinger's lips curved. I only broker certainties. A child of the king sits ready. A mother's love girds him. A kingdom craves continuity. A kingdom craves justice, Renly snapped. Continuity without truth is wrought painted gold. Varys opened soft hands. Truth may be many-hued, good sirs. The people do not sup on the color of a prince's hair. They sup on peace. Give them that, and they will call any man king. Ned climbed the first stair, feeling old aches protest each rise. Peace built on a lie fractures at the first true blow. I will not barter the realm's spine for quiet. He turned to Pedder. You know Robert's decree, Baelish. Bastards legitimated at the crown's whim. Gendry is proof enough of Robert's seed. Joffrey is not. Littlefinger tilted the whirling dagger so lamplight slid along its edge. Proof matters less than power. Gendry is a boy with a bull's arms and a gutter's accent. Who would rally banners to him? Stannis might, if it served, but Stannis is not yet here. While the queen is, Stannis is heir, Ned said. By every law written since Aegon knit the kingdoms, I will see that law stand. Varys sighed. A noble banner, though it may snap in a gale. Can you hold the Red Keep until Lord Stannis arrives? Can you hold the city? The gold cloak's answer to coin. The lion's coffers are deep. For every gold stag minted in Casterly rock, Renly cut in. The Stormlands can strike too. I've already dispatched riders. And I have friends in the city, my Lord Spider. Friends who prefer a lawful king to a queen's puppet. Ned raised a hand. Friends or foes, no blood will stain these floors on my word until Parley fails. We speak first. Littlefinger slipped the dagger away. And whom shall we speak to, when the lions are sharpening claws? He glanced up at the serrated throne. Shall we invite them here to seat their cub on these swords? I'll go to them, Ned said, with Sir Barristan beside me. Renly, you hold this hall. If I do not return before the hour of the eel, we bar the doors and pray, Renly finished. Go then, I'll keep the throne warm. He meant jest, but his eyes shone with something sharper than laughter. Ned wondered whether Renly saw the seat as symbol or as temptation. Not now, he told himself. One storm at a time. Barristan gathered a file of 6 white cloaks, young men, but loyal to their commander, if not to the Lion Queen. They marched into the torch-lined gallery that led toward Maegor's tower. Their footsteps echoed like knuckles on a coffin lid. Ned's own guards flanked them. He carried no banner. Ice rode his back, and his purpose rode his tongue. They descended a spiral. Halfway, distant notes of a highborn woman's harangue drifted up. Cersei's voice, unmistakable, slicing through the stone. She spoke beyond a closed arch where crimson pennants draped the walls and incense masked the iron tang of blood. 2 of Jaime's brothers, Kevan's sons, tall and wary, halted the procession. "No arms past this point," one announced. Barristan bristled. "A knight lays down his sword only before his king, sir, not before cousins to the queen." "And yet," Ned said, "we are here to parley, not to provoke." He unbuckled Ice, slow, deliberate, and laid the greatsword on a marble bench. The ring of metal on stone was final as a promise. Barristan did likewise, though reluctance pinched his mouth. The king's guard's swords followed. The bench sagged under more steel than most sieges saw. The Lannister cousins opened the arch. Ned stepped through into a lantern-bright antechamber, thick with perfume. Cersei waited upon a dais of gold-pillowed cushions. Behind her stood Jaime, silver armor damasked with lions unmasked, his helm under one arm. He watched Ned with no flicker of grin. Around them gathered Lords Merryweather, Crakehall, Mace Tyrell, whom Cersei had somehow lured to her cause, and half the small council. Pycelle clutching scrolls, Littlefinger, so he had slipped away, and of all men Janos Slynt, armor freshly wiped, though his eyes still showed the horror of the corridor battle. Ned's stomach twisted. Pycelle and Littlefinger both had come to her side as smoothly as water seeking its lower mark. Trust no spider, trust no mockingbird, he thought. Yet here he was, bare of arms, choked in their web. Cersei inclined her head. "Lord Stark, you come at last." Her voice might have been warm if winter had never touched the world. "We mourn my lord husband's death altogether, and now our first duty is clear. The crown must not lie empty. His Grace Prince Joffrey sits ready." "He sits unrightfully," Ned answered. "King Robert named Stannis his heir in council not 2 weeks past." "You heard it." "I heard a drunken boast," Cersei said. "Nothing writ, nothing sealed." Pycelle produced a parchment. She took it, broke no seal, yet displayed the ribbon wax for all to see. "Here is Robert's signed will, naming me regent until my son comes of age. The seal is plain." She let the paper roll across her lap. "A mother protects her children. You, Lord Stark, risk them. Call off your Northmen, bid your Stormland allies stand down, and we may yet find amity." Ned looked to Jaime. The knight's stare was a wall. No help there. He drew a breath. "Children are not to blame for parents' sins. I swore to Robert to guard yours as my own. I hold to that. Yet I cannot call false a lawful heir, when every line of descent names him. Stannis sails even now to claim his birthright. Bow to him, and the realm avoids civil war. Refuse and rivers run crimson." "Betty." Cersei's lips parted in a smile sharp enough to draw blood. "You speak of crimson rivers? My lord, they already run, in your hallways, at your own command. Janos Slynt tells me his men fell under your blades." "Slynt's men attempted murder," Barristan said. "We fought in defense of the king's person." "The king is dead," Cersei replied. "Killed by your negligence, Ser Barristan. But you may yet redeem your cloak." She turned to Ned again. "Last offer. Kneel, proclaim Joffrey, and your daughters stay safe. Deny, and the wolf's pups die screaming." Ned felt every word as a dagger in flesh once more. The memory of Bran lying broken, of Sansa's laughter, of Arya's fierce eyes. He thought of Catelyn in Riverrun, reading his letters. Of sons in Winterfell, of the chill wind that would carry news of their father's choice. He met Cersei's stare. Behind her triumph he saw fear. Fear of truth. Fear of losing the throne. but most of all fear for her children. That fear could burn half the realm. Yet Ned had feared too, and Robert's voice had begged mercy. Spare the children. The promise hammered inside his ribs like a smith at an anvil. I will not kneel, he said quietly. But neither will I spill a child's blood. I propose a council of regency. Myself, Sir Barristan, Lord Renly, Lords Tyrell and Arryn, and you, Queen Cersei, until Stannis arrives and the matter is judged by great council. No blades until then. The chamber hushed. Mace Tyrell shifted, mustache twitching. He smelled lordship in councils. To rule without war appealed to his rose-fed pockets. Even Pycelle looked uncertain. Jaime's voice sliced the quiet. And when Stannis arrives, he said, how long before heads roll? He'll name us traitors. He'll name the children abominations. No, we end the doubt now. He stepped forward, hand on sword belt. Every Lannister guard stiffened. Barristan's men mirrored. Tension strung the air taut enough to sing. Ned tasted iron at the back of his throat, the flavor of blood before it spilled. Cersei raised a slender hand. Jaime halted, though the strain near tore his neck. Her gaze locked on Ned. If I refuse, then gods forgive what follows. She lowered her hand. The gods seldom forgive. She turned to Littlefinger. Lord Baelish, you are master of coin. How long can the realm fund 2 armies? Littlefinger spread his fingers like a fan. A month? 2? It depends which ports burn first. Cersei's nails tapped ivory armrest. She looked to Mace Tyrell. And the Reach, will it follow Stannis' banner? Mace swallowed. The Reach follows Highgarden. And Highgarden follows me, Cersei said before he answered. She rose. Lord Stark, you bring war wrapped in parchment. I offer peace wrapped in truth. Last time, bend the knee. Ned bowed, to the chamber, not to her. My knee bends to the law alone. Cersei's gaze hardened to flint, then learned the law's price. She signaled. The cousins at the arch moved. Swords rasped. Barristan's men drew. Ned braced. But from behind, in the outer hall, a horn blast shrieked. Sharp, urgent, thrice. Ned's heart lurched. Renly's signal. The wolf howls. He stepped back, grabbed Barristan's sleeve. Out. Now. They surged through the arch before the Lannisters blocked it. Swords clashed behind. Ned snatched ice from the bench, guard parrying a cousin's slash in the same motion. Barristan bowled another aside with shield punch. White cloaks fell in around them, fighting toward the spiral. Gongs boomed farther off. Renly's men sealing gates. The stair emptied onto a gallery where tapestries whipped in storm wind, pouring through a shattered lancet. Rain slanted in, making the marble slick. Ned's boot slid. He caught the rail. A Lannister spearman lunged. Ice split the haft, hammered breastplate, flung him off the gallery into dimness below. Thunder rolled so close the stone quivered. Barristan shouted, "They stole ahead of us! Shields!" Down the corridor, a squad of red-cloaked crossbowmen knelt, strings drawn. Ned and the knights threw themselves behind a buttress as bolts raked the wall, punching stone shards. One grazed Ned's calf and tore cloth. He hissed. The white cloaks returned sword throws at impossible distance, buying moments. Barristan found a fallen circular table, splintered at one leg, hoisted it as shield, and with a roar stormed the corridor. Ned followed under its rim. Bolts thudded wood. 5 paces. 4. Ah! The crossbowman fumbled reload. Ice sprang overhead. The first man's helm flew, the second reeled on a stump of wrist. The survivors fled. They burst into the vestibule where 3 passages met. Chaos reigned. Tyrell men grappling Baratheon, bannermen loyal to Renly, uncertain which stag to follow. Stark gray, Lannister crimson, gold cloaks, rose green, colors tangled like threads in a lunatic loom. Over the din, Ned heard Renly's voice urging hold fast, hold line, mind the king's memory. Enemy horns answered from opposite wings. Ned seized Jory's shoulder as the captain darted past. The queen, sealed in Maegor's, but Jaime's riding for the great sept. Talk says he'll crown Joffrey before dawn. Then dawn can't wait. Ned turned to Barristan. We split, you with Jory. Block their path to the Sept. I take Renly, we secure Garrison Tower for the bells. Bells were power. Ring them and the city would know which king rose. The silent fight in the keep might then tip. Barristan clasped forearms. Honor guard the wolf, my lord. They parted, each dragging a river of blades. Renly had rallied his men near the north arch, blue-green cloaks woven into a ragged wedge. Half your Northmen hold the Hall of Lamps, Renly said when Ned joined. My lancers push for the rookery to break Cersei's ravens, but more lions pour from the cellars, old red wine hidden with swords, it seems. Then we root them out. Ned surveyed the wedge. Maybe 20 able fighters, counting his own. Enough. He set jaw. To the Garrison Tower. They advanced through chambers Ned barely recalled from Robert's coronation feast. Long tables overturned. Silver platters scattered. Candles guttered where wine slicked the slate. A minstrel lay trampled, mandolin crushed across ribs. 2 ghostly dwarfs in motley fled as blades pressed. The castle had become a carnival of death. At the base of the Garrison Tower they met steel. Sir Boros, blount with a ring of House Lannister soldiers. Boros's helm carried gilded tusks. His eyes behind slits glimmered with zeal. In the name of King Joffrey, he bellowed. Yield the keep. Ned stepped forward. Unbar the bells, sir, and no more blood needs spill. Rainwater ran from his hair across brow to sting his wound. He tasted salt and storm. Boros raised a crimson banner. Loose, he ordered. Arrows hissed from alcoves above. Renly's forward ranks crumpled. One of Ned's men took a shaft through cheek, fell clawing. Ned shouted, "Shields!" but too late. He surged, knowing second volley would finish them. Renly charged beside him. The wedge broke the Lannister circle like a boar through dogs. Ned hewed at Boros. The Kingsguard's tusked helm rang with ice's kiss. Boros stumbled. Renly's mace swung, shattered knee. Boros fell howling. Arrows ceased as archers realized friends stood in line of fire. Ned's rear pushed through, seized the stairs. They pounded upward, boots slipping on soaked steps. All the while bell ropes creaked overhead in the wind. Muted voices of a giant choir waiting a conductor's hand. Third landing. A barricade. Tipped barrels, crates, kegs of lamp oil ironically chosen to choke passage. 2 crossbowmen guarded behind. A flaming brand lay nearby. Drop. Ned smelled what Cersei meant. Burn the tower. Silence the bells. He lunged, swept ice beneath the crossbow's aim. One bow split, string lashing cheek. The other clattered away. Renly's squire extinguished the brand under a cloak before sparks kissed oil. They cleared the debris, reached the belfry ladder. Rain whistled down hatch. Ned climbed first. Up top, bells great as ships' hulls swung in gale. Timbers groaning. A single guardsman attempted to cut the ropes. Ned knocked the axe from his grip and booted him into shadows. He seized the bell rope. Muscles roared in protest. Still, he pulled. The first peal thundered across King's Landing, drowning even the storm. Stone vibrated. Windows across the city flicked a light. Again Ned hauled. Again. Second peal. A pattern no festival ever rang. Alert. Alarm. A king is dead. He heard new bells answering from Sept of Baelor, from Street of Silk Chapels, from Dragon Gate. The city called out. Let them guess which dragon rose, he prayed. Let them wonder until Stannis comes. Renly hauled the second rope, hammering the rhythm. Down below, Ned saw through louvers, the red glow of torches massing. Jaime's men regrouping. The tower would be encircled soon. We can't hold here, Renly said between pulls. Our duty is done, Ned answered. Back to throne room. They descended, regrouped among the wounded. Losses heavy yet courage high. The bells emboldened men. They pushed for the Golden Gallery. Twice enemy companies tried to cut them off, but uncertainty now crept in. Some gold cloaks lowered spears, unwilling to choose sides while bells told secrecy. Near midnight Ned's band burst into throne room once more. Lord Mace Tyrell awaited at foot of dais, cheeks ruddy, hands raised. "Enough," he brayed. "The Queen Regent requests parley. Your men stand down, we stand down. Too many fine knights lie bleeding." Parley ended when arrows flew, Ned said. Yet Renly pulled him close. "Listen," Tyrell hesitates. "If Highgarden steps back, Cersei loses half her reach supply lines. We need allies." Barristan entered through opposite arch with Jory, cloaks torn, limbs stained. Jaime's retreating to the EECP'd. Crowned the boy amid corpses. Smallfolk carried Joffrey through torchlight, like a new dragon hatched. "Then Parley is a crown already," Ned murmured. Still, he nodded to Tyrell. They met in the aisle. Swords sheathed but fists blood-caked. Mace dabbed at his mustache. "A divided realm starves," the Reach Lord said. "My harvest wagons cannot roll while armies burn hamlets." "Name your harvest's price," Renly said. Mace tilted head. "Peace. A seat on Regency for the Reach. Protection of my daughter Margaery's claim to Tommen if the succession falters." Ned almost smiled. Politics ever blossomed where bodies cooled. "You shall have a seat," Ned said, "if you stand for Stannis as heir." Mace gnawed lip. "Stannis has no sons. Neither did Aegon the Conqueror," Renly said. "Yet he founded a realm. Stand with us and your grandson could yet sit that throne." Tyrell's eyes glittered. "Stannis is cold as iron. He'd sooner flog a man than court him." "He needs your grain," Renly countered. "He will court you well enough." Rain boomed overhead like distant drums. Mace weighed choices then nodded. "I'll march no host for the lions, yet I withhold banners until Stannis sets foot in the city." "Agreed," Ned said. They clasped wrists, sealing nothing yet promising enough. They allowed Tyrell's men to carry away their wounded. Barristan sent white cloaks to watch the sept. None interfered. Thunder quieted near cockcrow. The bells, by Ned's order, rang no more after third hour. Lament now, not alarm. Silence returned, broken only by rain gurgling in gutters and the distant crack of collapsing awnings. Ned at last found a chamber. Jon Arryn's old study, untouched by fight. He collapsed in the high-backed chair beneath a mildewed Arryn falcon banner. Candlelight danced on shelves, still holding ledgers of taxes never collected. He pressed palm to eyes. Each heartbeat echoed the weight of vows. Footsteps approached. Varys glided in like a shadow slipping from a candle's base. He carried no guards. "You bleed, my lord. May I fetch a poultice?" Ned let hand fall. "Speak, Eunach." Varys folded into a chair opposite. "The queen girds herself in Maegor's tower. She has Joffrey, Tommen, Myrcella, and a score of hostages besides. Mordane, Septa Scalera, pages, singers. She knows every gate and secret postern. She will not yield." "I know. Your hold on the keep depends on men whose purses Littlefinger fills. Should coin shift, so may they." Ned flexed, sore fingers. "Suggest your cure." "Cersei's coin must dry up. Her father, Lord Tywin, camps at Harrenhal with 1,000 heavy wagons of gold and steel, ready to march the Gold Road. If he arrives before Lord Stannis, your cause collapses." "Then we delay him," Ned said. Varys dipped head. "Burn the bridge at Maidenpool, and the King's Road floods in spring's meltwater. But such acts require commanders far from quarrel." His small eyes glittered. "Lord Stark, send Renly. His dash suits raids. You stay, the realm sees stability." Ned considered. Renly's hunger for power, dangerous if left within walls near throne. Send him east and perhaps that hunger spent itself on Tywin's baggage. And if Renly failed, Stannis still marched. "I'll think on it," Ned finally said. "Think swiftly." Varys rose. "One more whisper. Sir Loras Tyrell pleads to lead the mission." A flower-seeking glory bends easily to a storm. He bowed and left Ned alone again, with storm-stained ledgers and a heart sore as frostbite. Dawn cracked through clouds in a pale smear. From the rookery a horn blew. A ship on the river. Ned's pulse jumped. Stannis. But 3 days, he recalled. Yet storms could speed tide as well as hinder. He pushed to feet, limped toward the outer balcony that overlooked the Blackwater rush. Mist clung to the water like torn wool. Through it glided a lean galley, black hull, striped sails, the Maid of the Wind. A stag sigil stamped gold on the prow. Stag crowned over a heart aflame. Stannis had come early. Ned's breath fogged in dawn air. He whispered a silent thanks to gods old and new. But a new worry nagged. Would Stannis believe bells or the gold-coated lies? Would he raise siege rather than enter? His fleet could hammer the city if first greeting proved bolts. He hurried below where Renly conferred with Barristan. Stannis in the river, Ned said. We go to welcome him. White flag, no arms. Have dock cleared, signal friendly. Renly's brows knit. Stannis was elder brother yet rival. Still, he nodded. I'll send Sir Parman with banners. Ned, Barristan, and 4 guards rode the postern path to the river gate, picking through debris of knights' skirmishes. Small folk peeked from shutters, eyes ringed red from sleepless bells. Some spat at Lannister corpses. Some crossed wrists in warding signs at Stark banners, uncertain which devil ruled this dawn. At Muddy Gate, the portcullis ratcheted up. The galley's oars stood shipped, tide carried her close. On foredeck a hard figure in black lacquered armor watched shore with a stare, even at distance felt sharp as all. Stannis Baratheon. Davos Seaworth stood beside, his gloved left hand resting on hilt of bone-white dagger. Ned stepped onto dock. Lord Stannis, he hailed. The galley touched, lines tossed. Stannis strode ashore. Lord Stark, he said, voice hoarse from salt. Is my brother dead? He died yester even, poisoned. Ned met his eyes square. Stannis neither flinched nor frowned. And the boy king? Joffrey sits crowned by his mother's knights. I expected as much. Stannis surveyed the walls where lion banners still flapped. And you call me rightful heir? I do. As hand, as witness to Robert's decree. Davos produced parchment with wax seals. Dragonstone scribes had already drafted proclamation. We sail prepared. Stannis's gaze speared Ned. Then why do I find the Red Keep half-clad, in Lannister crimson, the city gate not opened in welcome? Because night was war, Ned replied. My men hold throne room, but Cersei holds children and Queen's Tower. The city teeters. Stannis grunted. It will not teeter when I am on the throne. He beckoned captains ashore. Galleys behind bristling with ranks of Dragonstone spearmen, Florent archers, sailors armed with long axes of oaken handle. Thunder of boots on planks shook the quay. Inside the gate horns sounded again, this time alarm. Jaime had seen the fleet. Ned's window shrank. Your Grace, he began, then corrected. Lord Stannis. We must secure the children before blades cut throats. He explained promise to Robert, the vow. Stannis listened stone-faced. A king's bastards are royal property. Robert's decree stands. I will shield them. As for the queen's get, a muscle twitched in his jaw. We will not kill innocents, but they will not reign. Then help me free them before others plot worse, Ned said. Stannis nodded curt approval. He turned to Davos. You guard the river gate. No vessel leaves but my own. To his captains, we take the keep. Ned led Stannis through streets still slick, past beggars bowing half in hope, half in fear. Bells rang funeral now. Smoke drifted from heaps of broken stalls. The Northman and the East Wind King mounted the hill where the Red Keep reared like a bleeding dragon. Above, on ramparts of Maker's Tower, Cersei appeared in crimson cloak, billowing. Golden hair unbound in wind. In her hands she clutched a child, Tommen. Trembling, and at his throat glimmered a thin dagger. Her voice carried on the gale like a curse. Stannis Baratheon, come claim your throne and see your nephew die first. Crowds gasped. Soldiers froze. Ned felt blood drain. Stannis shaded eyes, stared upward. Release the child, Cersei. You will have fair trial. She laughed, nails white on Tommen's collar. Trial? There is no trial for lions taken by stags. There is only blood. Put down your arms, or I put my son over the wall. Below, Barristan whispered. A threat she would keep. Stannis' face remained marble. Your boy is no nephew of mine. But he is mine, Ned said under breath. And Robert's innocent wish. He stepped forward, pulled free helm, raised his voice. Cersei Lannister, hear me. I stand by my word. Your children will not die. Let them go, and I will ensure safe exile. Old Town, the free cities, whichever shore never sees this war again. Her eyes fixed on him. Rain streaked her cheeks. Rain, or tears, he could not tell. Safe, as you kept my husband, she shouted. A poisoner kept your husband, Stannis thundered. Obey the hand, woman, or meet justice. Cersei pressed dagger tighter. Tommen whimpered. Ned raised empty hands. Send the boy down. I give you my life in forfeit. Megtertinen. Gasps rippled among the ranks. No, Stannis growled, but Ned cut him off with a glance. For the realm, Ned said softly. For the promise. Cersei's eyes widened. She searched the yard, saw archers knock. Something warred within. At last she hissed, bring me a rope. Servants unfurled cord thick as a man's wrist, lowered it from the parapet. They tied Tommen, blindfolded him lest he look down. Inch by inch they eased him, dangling like a doll. Ned's heart beat with every sway. When boots touched dirt, Barristan rushed forward, lifted the boy free. Tommen sobbed, clinging to icy steel. Ned exhaled once. Then he unclasped cloak, sword, belt, letting them fall. I come, he called. Eddard, Renly cried from wall aghast. But Cersei's reply snapped. I want the wolf without teeth. And alone. Ned ascended the postern stair unarmed. Rain lashed. Every step the keep seemed to shrink behind him, every bolt hole sealed by Stannis' grim captains. Yet one walkway unguarded. His. At top rampart Jaime waited beside Cersei. His sword lay on stone between them, edge shimmering. Cersei nudged it with heel toward Ned. Take it, she said. If you believe honor requires a final fight. I've fought enough, Ned replied. Wind flung hair across his eyes. He brushed it back. Jaime's face bore the calm of men before a tourney tilt, but the green eyes glimmered hurt. This needn't be your end, Stark, Jaime said. Kneel to Joffrey and go north in peace. You know I cannot. Then this is folly. Perhaps. Ned looked to Cersei. But now the choice is yours. I stand here by my vow. Release the girl and the throne room gate opens to the law. Cersei's mouth trembled. For a heartbeat Ned glimpsed the girl beneath Queen's mask, a child once denied by prophecy. Younger, more beautiful, cast down. Fear, love. Fury braided her silence. Below, Stannis men massed, grappling hooks ready. A single command would storm the tower. Time hung. Cersei sheathed the dagger. Take him, she said to Jaime. Jaime shook head. No. Their eyes clashed. Jaime turned to Ned. I slew one mad king for the realm. I'll not kill a just man for my sister's vengeance. He stepped back. Cersei screamed, tore skyward. She snatched sword, rushed Ned. He did not lift hand, blade bit collar, gouged shallow line. Jaime seized her wrist. They struggled. The sword clanged away, skittered over parapet, vanished into rain. Guards burst from stair. Stannis soldiers, white cloaks, Northmen. They surrounded Queen and Knight. Cersei sagged to knees, sobbing hoarse curses. Jaime stood over her, chest heaving, swordless, defeated by mercy. Ned touched the fresh cut, blood warm. He signaled men. Take them to secure chambers. Treat them fairly. He descended, knees weak, yet heart somehow lighter than dawn's pale sky. In the yard, Tommen sat wrapped in blanket beside Barristan. Myrcella ran to clutch her brother. Ned knelt, smoothing their hair. You're safe, he told them. They stared, terror and wonder mixed. Stannis approached. Well done, he grunted. Your head remains yours, for now. He faced the children. You are of tainted birth, yet innocent. You will sail at once to Old Town, Ward of the Faith. There you may find quiet lives." Tommen blinked tears. Myrcella bowed her head. Ned rose, pain-lancing calf wound. "Your grace, the throne awaits." Stannis surveyed the walls, the bowed backs of soldiers, the ragged banners, corpses. "Clean this filth," he ordered. By sunset, the Iron Throne Room stood hushed. Ned Barristan, Renly, Mace Tyrell, Varys, Davos, and lords, great and small, ringed the dais. The bells pealed coronation slow, solemn. Stannis climbed steps. He did not smile. The crown of stag antlers, black iron inlaid with shadow gems, rested in Davos's hands until final vows. Flameless torches, dragon steel wrought, caught dusk's last glow. Outside, thunder had moved on. When crown touched Stannis' brow, he spoke. "I am the king, by law and by right, and I will see that law kept. Justice to foes, mercy to children, and peace to the realm." His gaze found Ned. "Rise, Lord Eddard Stark, Lord Regent, protector of the realm, hand of the king." A sword tapped Ned's shoulder. Lightbringer, Stannis named it now, though its glow was only firelit. Ned bowed. The hall cheered, some with fervor, some by rote, some because living men cheer any crown that promises tomorrow. Yet in that roar Ned heard not triumph but the deep toll of cost. Robert's laugh forever silent, streets littered, families sundered. He thought of Sansa in far Aerie, of Arya's quicksilver smile, of Bran dreaming of flight. He thought of Catelyn reading Raven's ink. But promise held, children spared, throne true. Some seeds survive winter. He would guard them, though nights grew long. As torches guttered and lords kneeled, Ned felt the chill of the North call like wolf song under stars. His duty lay still before him, 5 hours of darkness yet before the world saw dawn enough to test this newborn peace. Still, for the first time since Robert's wine cup cracked, he believed dawn would come. And when it did, he would stand ready, sword steady, to keep the promise that had cost more than any crown, to spare, to shield, to deliver the realm not to lies but to the lingering stubborn hope of honest men. Inca. Rain washed King's Landing clean and new the day after Stannis Baratheon was crowned, but not even thunder and river wind could sweep away the stink of blood, old smoke, and fear. Every gutter in the city ran with more than storm water. Every alley echoed with the memory of battle, with the shouts of gold cloaks and the howl of wolves, and with the uneasy silence that only ever followed civil wars. First fever. Ned spent the first hours of the new reign in the deep and marrow of labor. No time for sleep, only for order. He and Barristan stood at the shattered gates of Maegor's Tower before the bells had ceased their coronation peal, watching lines of broken Lannister men shuffle, manacled under Stormland's spears. Cersei herself had been removed to a high chamber, windowless, guarded not only by Stannis' most loyal, but by 2 silent sisters of the faith. Myrcella and Tommen had been allowed a last embrace with their mother, then taken under heavy escort to the river, where Davos Seaworth waited with ships to bear them, with a small retinue and a hand-picked septon, downriver to Old Town and the Starry Sept. They had wept, as children weep for any loss. But Ned stayed until the last sail dropped beneath the morning fog, and the little hands of the children waved from the deck. He gave the order to the sailors and to Davos. Let no harm come to them, whatever storms the river or the world might throw, and then returned to the Red Fortress, his heart cold and tight in his breast. Inside the Red Keep, the work was harder. War had left 1,000 wounds and 10,000 questions. Lord Mace Tyrell had already planted himself in the council chamber, surrounded by scribes, and Renly, now hailed as Lord of Storm's End and Master of Laws, moved among the corridors with barely hidden purpose, his green cloak trailing after him like the first tendril of a vine that would, given time and soil, swallow stone. Stannis met Ned on the high terrace above the Godswood, where black water still pooled beneath the heart tree's mutilated trunk. The new king stood rigid at the balustrade, hands clasped behind him, his jaw set in that grim, relentless line that Ned remembered from campaign tents outside Pike and Gulltown. before Robert's rebellion had ever been more than a gamble and a banner. "You have done as you promised," Stannis said without turning. "The children are safe. My enemies are broken. The throne sits beneath my crown." Ned stood with the rain gusting about his shoulders, face raised to the gray. "It is not victory yet, your grace. There are wounds that do not heal with a sword or crown." Stannis' mouth thinned. "I know that, Stark. My daughter writes from Dragonstone. She says the bells frighten her. I told her they ring for peace." Ned glanced sideways. "Do you believe it?" Stannis looked to the black water, the torn bark of the heart tree, the ruined gardens. "I believe it is peace for now. Lannister banners still gather on the Gold Road. Tywin is not beaten, and the city is a wounded lion. She may yet bite. But if we do not seize the moment, it will not matter who rules when the next war comes." Ned's hand went to ice, out of habit. "What would you have of me?" "Order," Stannis said simply. "You are the hand. I named you as much in sight of every lord and beggar in this city. Write my will, make the city obey, root out the last vipers." "I will," Ned said, though he felt the weariness of all the broken years in his bones. "Start with the council." Stannis pressed his hands to the stone. "The realm needs strong voices. No more coin schemers or silk-cloaked betrayers. Varys stays for now. He is useful and frightened enough to be honest. Littlefinger is to be watched. Pycelle, I trust you to judge him." He gave Ned a look that admitted, for the first time, a trace of vulnerability. "But above all, keep Renly in check. My brother has too much charm and too many friends." Ned nodded. "He is your brother. He will bend or break as you command. Let us hope it need not come to that." Stannis exhaled, the rain sliding down his nose and beard. "Go, die. I have letters to write, to every lord with steel or gold. Today they call me king. Tomorrow, they may test whether I am worthy. But while I rule, let the city see justice." Memdapirius. He turned away, already dismissing Ned in his mind. Ned left the king on the terrace, and walked slowly through the sodden gardens. He paused at the heart tree, knelt, and laid his palm to the wet red-stained wood. His prayer was silent and brief, for the North, for his family, and for the souls of the dead. Then he rose and walked into the new day. The council chamber was already busy. Renly stood at the window, green velvet bright against the gloom. Hands spread as he addressed Mace Tyrell and Lord Arryn, recently arrived from the Eyrie with young Robert in tow. Varys, robed in somber violet, poured wine for Lord Grafton of Gulltown. Littlefinger lounged in a corner, eyes flickering over the ledgers brought in by Pycelle. Ned entered, and all eyes turned to him. Renly smiled, quick as a fox. "Lord Stark, we were just debating who will command the city watch. The Goldcloaks are in shambles, half fled, half want new captains." "Janos Slynt is in the Black Cells," Ned said. "He will not return to command." "A new man then," Renly said. "Someone loyal. Someone honest." Ned glanced to Varys. "You know the men of the city, Lord Varys. Who would you recommend?" Varys fluttered a hand. "There are several, my lord. But if it please you, I would name Harwin Halfhand. Honest, clever, and no man's creature." Ned nodded. "Harwin then, make it so." Littlefinger smiled over his cup. "The small folk already call him Harwin of the Bells. He kept order when the city panicked at the sound." "Let that be his badge then," Ned said. "And see he is armed well." Mace Tyrell rose, his girth straining his doublet. "If I may, Lord Hand, I would speak for the city stores. Bread is scarce, the markets fear pillage, and the Reach alone can fill the granaries. My men will keep the peace on the Street of Flower." Ned inclined his head. "Your loyalty will be remembered, Lord Tyrell, but the king's law must be seen above all others. The price of grain is set by the crown, not by any house." Tyrell's eyes flickered, but he bowed. Pycelle tottered forward with a new scroll. "I have here a list of wounded from the fighting, lords and commoners both. The city's leechcraft is taxed. We must send to Old Town for more." "Send your fastest birds," Ned said. Renly broke in. "And what of the great Sept?" The High Septon has asked if he may hold a mass for Robert's soul. The small folk want to mourn their king." Ned hesitated, then nodded. "Let it be done. Let all the city see how a king is honored in death, and how a new king shows respect for the old. Tell the Septon to make prayers for all the dead, Lannister or Baratheon, highborn and low. There were other matters. The rebuilding of the gate, the tending of the wounded, the question of justice for traitors and mercy for the defeated. Ned worked through each with the patient endurance of a blacksmith at the forge, shaping what he could, discarding what would not hold. When at last the sun fell behind the broken battlements and torches were brought, he dismissed the council and walked alone to the Hand Solar. He found Sansa there, sitting beside the cold hearth with her hair unbound, staring at a small basket of blue flowers sent by Sir Loras Tyrell. She rose when he entered, tried to smile. "Bother." He closed the door and knelt beside her, pulling her close. She was trembling. "Are they safe, Myrcella Tommen?" "They are, little bird. They sail for Old Town even now." She shuddered, hiding her face in his shoulder. "I was so afraid. Joffrey, he said he would be king, that he would kill anyone who betrayed him. He said, Her voice broke. Ned stroked her hair. "You are safe now. There is no king here who would harm you." "Now?" She pulled back, eyes red. "Will I have to marry? Lord Tyrell's men keep bringing flowers, and Sir Loras smiled at me." He almost smiled himself. "Not unless you wish it, Sansa. You are my daughter. No man will force you." She nodded, though the fear lingered in her eyes. "Go to bed, Sansa. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be better." She kissed his cheek, then hurried to the door. When she was gone, Ned sat alone and watched the shadows move across the floor. "Tomorrow," he thought. "Tomorrow, I must find Arya." He did not sleep until near dawn. He dreamed of wolves running through the Godswood, of Bran's face at a window, of Catelyn standing on a wind-swept hill at Winterfell, her hair streaming behind her, calling his name. The next day began with new oaths. Stannis held court in the throne room, seated beneath the iron canopy, Lightbringer at his side. The lords of the realm came in procession, Aeron and Grafton from the Vale, Mace Tyrell and Lord Rowan from the Reach, Tully's banners borne by Edmure in the stead of his ailing father, and even dour Lord Blackwood from the Riverlands. Each swore the new king's peace, each laid sword at his feet and kissed the Baratheon ring. But every oath was heavy with calculation. Every gesture carried the scent of old ambition. Ned saw it in the way Tyrell lingered, eyes on Renly, in the nervous glances exchanged by Aeron's men, and in the sour stillness with which the remaining Lannister knights stood at the back, hands on hilts, waiting. Jaime Lannister, stripped of cloak and sword, waited in silence. He had been confined the night before to a cell with 2 windows and 5 guards, and when Stannis summoned him, he came with head high and no sign of fear. "You slew a king," Stannis said when Jaime knelt. "And you have served a queen who betrayed her vows." Jaime's lips curled. "I have served many masters, your grace, and killed for fewer." Stannis' eyes narrowed. "And if I spared you, what would you do?" "Serve only myself." Jaime answered with a flicker of the old smile. "I tire of crowns." There was laughter in the hall, but Stannis did not smile. "You will serve as a warning, Sir Jaime. But I will not kill a defeated enemy who shows repentance. You will go to the wall. Take the black and find your honor where the snows are deep." For a moment, Ned saw astonishment in Jaime's face, perhaps even relief. The Lion of Lannister bowed, then allowed the guards to lead him away. When all the lords had sworn, when even the Tyrell and Tully bannermen had touched sword and knee, Stannis rose and raised Lightbringer overhead. "I am the king by law and right," he declared. "I will be just, and I will be feared. Let those who love peace remain. Let those who crave war find it elsewhere." "Nundar." The crowd cheered, but the sound was thin. Peace had been bought at too high a price for anyone to trust it yet. The days that followed were a blur of order and threat, rebuilding and rumor. Lord Tywin Lannister camped at Harrenhal with 12,000 swords, his banners plain on every hill. Stannis sent ravens with terms: surrender, return to Casterly Rock, and Cersei and her children would be spared exile and live as honored hostages. Tywin's reply was cold and measured. No peace unless the Lannisters retained their dignity. No retreat unless every captive was returned. Ned met often with Renly and Davos, with Barristan and Selmy, and with Varys and Littlefinger, now watched by two of Ned's own men wherever they moved. Plans were drawn and redrawn. How to hold the city, how to keep the Riverlands loyal, how to break Tywin's host without another storm of fire and steel. Each evening, Ned walked the battlements and gazed toward the west, half expecting a tide of Lannister knights to break from the hills at any hour. But the days passed, and the gold banners did not come. Instead, refugees arrived, small folk driven before Tywin's foragers, men and women and children in rags, clutching what few belongings they had. Ned ordered the city gates opened, bread distributed, shelter given wherever space could be found. The septs overflowed with the hungry and the dying, but the city did not riot. The memory of the bells was too near, the king's new laws too strict. One evening, as Ned walked the market square, he found a group of children gathered round a barrel of old apples, arguing over bruised fruit. One boy, dark-haired and strong-armed, turned at Ned's approach and stared. "Are you Lord Stark?" he asked. "I am." The boy wiped his mouth. "I'm Gendry. They said you'd send for me." Ned smiled despite the weight of the day. "Come with me, Gendry. There's work to be done, and your father—" He faltered, thinking of Robert, of the promise. "Your father would want you to have a better life than this." Gendry nodded, unsmiling, and followed. Ned sent him to the smithy at the castle, in the charge of Tabo Mott-Dada. "Train him well," Ned told the armorer. "Hay is of good stock." "Ay, my lord. He swings a hammer like a king already." "Nay. See that he learns all you know," Ned said, and left Gendry staring after him, a strange wonder in his eyes. On the 10th day of Stannis' reign, a raven arrived from Winterfell. The writing was Catelyn's, her hand, steady but bearing news that cut deeper than war. Bran had awoken from his long sleep, but he would never walk again. Robb ruled as lord in his father's stead, and the North stood ready, though broken by loss and wary of southern promises. Rickon grew wild and untamed. Catelyn begged Ned to send for Arya, who had vanished from all but rumor. He read the letter 3 times, then took it to the Godswood, and wept for the first time since he was a boy. The next day, he sent letters north and west to every bannerman and every lord who had once sworn to the Wolf's Head. "I serve the king," he wrote, "but my heart belongs to the north. Stand ready, the storm may not be over." He called Sansa to his side and told her of her mother, her brothers, the hope for Arya. She clung to him, and for a moment Ned felt that all the blood and sorrow had not been in vain. But the work pressed ever onward. Stannis demanded new laws, no more pardons for traitors, no mercy for those who would sell the king's peace. The gold cloaks patrolled the streets 2 by 2, and the bells, silent now, were polished and ready for the next peal. Varys came to Ned on the 13th day, his face drawn and anxious. "The queen requests audience," he whispered. "She wishes to speak of her children and of peace." Ned found Cersei in her cell, alone, except for the silent sisters. She rose when he entered, her golden hair unbound, her eyes dark with sleeplessness. "Lord Stark," she said, "you are a hard man. I am the king's hand." She smiled, bitter and bright. "You are a fool. Do you think Stannis will show mercy when Tywin comes? Do you think he will spare my children forever?" "Your children are safe," Ned said. "They sail for Old Town." She shuddered. "Safe now. But for how long?" "I know Stannis. He hates us. He will find a way to kill them, and me. You are under the king's protection." Her laugh was brittle. "King's protection? I have seen kings come and go. I have seen oaths broken and made anew. Tell me, Lord Stark, would you have spared my children if Robert had lived?" "Damn." He did not answer. She shook her head. "I would have done anything to keep them safe. Anything." Ned's voice was quiet. "I know." She moved to the window, pressed her cheek to the cold stone. "Tell my father, if he will bargain, If he will give up his banners, I will go into exile with Tommen and Myrcella. I will not fight Stannis for a lost crown." Ned studied her. "I will tell him." She nodded once. "Then go. You have won for now." Ninyoer. He left her there, silhouetted against the gray light, as broken as the rest of them. On the 15th day, Tywin Lannister finally replied to Stannis' terms. He would retreat to Casterly Rock, recall his banners, and give hostages for his peace, but only if Cersei, Tommen, and Myrcella were allowed to join him, unmolested, and only if all Lannister property in the city was respected. Ned carried the news to Stannis. The king read the letter, then looked to Ned. "Do you trust him?" Ned shrugged. "I trust a lion to roar." Stannis considered. "The realm has bled enough. Let him go, but every hostage, every coin will be accounted for." They drew up the treaty that night, under seal and torchlight, and Ned sent word to Old Town. The children were to be transferred to their grandfather's custody. He did not like it. But it was peace, and peace was more precious than vengeance. Cersei, escorted by Renly and 24 knights, departed 3 days later, her face veiled, her eyes never leaving her children. The city watched in silence as the last Lannisters filed out the river gate and rode west, their banners trailing, their gold and pride intact. King's Landing breathed at last, a sigh of relief, of exhaustion, of hope. Summer returned in the following weeks, and for the first time since Robert's death, the sun warmed the stones of the Red Keep without the threat of fire or steel. Ned worked with Harwin Halfhand to restore the city's order, with Barristan to build a new order of Kingsguard, with Renly to keep the lords in council, and with Varys to root out the last shadows of Cersei's spies. The small folk grumbled about new taxes and new laws, but the markets were full. The bells rang for births and weddings, not for war, and the city mended. Ned found Arya at last, running with the ragged orphans in Flea Bottom, her hair hacked short, her clothes filthy, but her eyes bright with defiance. He brought her back to the keep, scolded her, hugged her, wept over her as a father does for a child found after long fear. Sansa and Arya quarreled, then made peace, then quarreled again. Ned let them life, he thought, was quarrel and reconciliation. Better that than silence. Stannis summoned Ned often, asking for counsel, for judgment, for news of the north and the riverlands. The king ruled with iron, but he listened, and he honored his promises. The realm, for a season, was held together by stubborn men and the battered hope of a kingdom grown weary of war. One evening, as the sun set over the bay and the sky flared crimson and gold, Ned stood at the battlements and watched the city below. He saw children chasing each other through the market, banners fluttering in the wind, ships docking at the river, and for the first time in years he felt hope. Not the foolish hope of a boy, but the earned hope of a man who had seen the cost of every promise and still chose to keep it. He thought of Robert, of Catelyn, of his children north and south. He thought of the wolves in Winterfell, and the white snows that would soon dust the city's walls. He thought of honor and mercy, and the long, hard peace that must be built one day at a time. Tomorrow, he knew, there would be new troubles, new quarrels, new storms on the horizon. But tonight, there was peace, and a kingdom waiting to be healed. Ned Stark stood watch over King's Landing, and for a little while, at least, the city slept safe beneath his hand. And in the dark, a wolf howled. Not in mourning, but in greeting. For the night was not an end, but a beginning. The first days of peace after the storm were uneasy. A thin and brittle crust over boiling currents. King's Landing wore its wounds like a garment. Broken stones in the streets, black scars on the gates. Knots of ragged men gathered around ruined bakeries and boarded taverns, whispering in voices hoarse with hunger and old rage. Yet for all the uncertainty, the city did not erupt again. Ned Stark moved among its people, cloak heavy with the weight of Hand's chain, and the small folk stared and whispered, but did not jeer. Bread lines lengthened, but riots never came. Perhaps the sight of so many corpses unburied in alleys and squares kept even anger cautious. Perhaps it was only the fear that peace, once broken, could so easily turn again to massacre. Ned saw little of Stannis in those weeks. The king buried himself in proclamations and council, each day beginning before sunrise in the Tower of the Hand, ending after midnight with a pile of parchment taller than his crown. He ruled with a relentless hand, and more than one new law bore the sharp edges of Dragonstone. But he listened to Ned. The Hand's council grew into law, and those who had expected the king to purge every Lannister friend and bannerman found their hopes frustrated. There were executions, Janos Slint for treachery, several lesser goldcloaks who'd killed for coin, and 2 Lannister knights caught looting, but most who bent the knee were spared. Many lords, smelling the new wind, bent quickly. The city changed shape under the steady pressure of new order. Littlefinger was stripped of his office, his properties sequestered by the crown. He did not protest, but vanished quietly from the keep with only a mocking bow, leaving behind riddles and debts that took months to unwind. Pycelle was retired to a cell in the Maester's Tower, given parchment and ink to write his memoirs, and replaced by a younger Maester from the Citadel, whose northern birth and sharp tongue suited Ned's taste. Varys was kept in his web, under closer watch. The eunuch proved useful in negotiating with the Tyrells and smoothing the feathers of lords who might otherwise have been restive. Mace Tyrell moved into the role of master of ships and began construction of new war galleys to secure the bay. Renly's friends, young lords of the Reach and Stormlands, flocked to court, lending a note of restless celebration to the city's exhausted recovery. The new small council included men Ned trusted: Barristan Selmy, Davos Seaworth, Lord Arryn, and old Lord Grafton of Gulltown. For the first time since Jon Arryn's death, the council table felt more like a place of decisions than conspiracies. Jaime Lannister took the Black quietly, escorted north by 100 sworn swords. No song was made of his departure, no word spoken of his past. Ned watched the procession leave the city one gray morning and felt an odd twist of sorrow. So many ghosts, so many broken men in the wake of the Lion's pride. Cersei was gone, her name forbidden in the keep, her banners stripped from every wall. Her children too were far from the city, safe under Tywin's gold and shadow, and the tension that followed their exile left a kind of vacuum. Where once the city's ruling heart had pulsed with Lannister gold and Baratheon bluster, now it beat in a new and unfamiliar rhythm. For a while, every man, woman, and child waited for disaster to return. But each day peace held. Hope grew a little more certain. Ned found his own household a refuge in the new order. Arya, now scrubbed clean and dressed as a lady once more, spent her days on the practice yard with Syrio Forel, whose appointment as master-at-arms caused no small talk among the lords. Syrio took in lost boys and girls from Flea Bottom and set them to drilling with sticks and dulled blades. The sound of laughter and shouting drifted through the windows of the Hand's apartments, and Ned, passing by with Sansa on his arm, sometimes paused to watch. Sansa herself grew quieter but stronger. She walked the courts and gardens with Lady Brienne of Tarth, who had ridden from Storm's End with Renly and now served as Sansa's sworn shield. Brienne's enormous presence made Sansa's life safe from cruel whispers, and if some laughed at the sight, none laughed long. One day, as Ned read at his desk, Sansa entered with a rolled parchment. "A message from Mother," she said. Ned broke the seal and scanned the lines. Catelyn wrote from Riverrun. Robb was holding the north well, sending men south to garrison Moat Cailin, watching for trouble from White Harbor. Bran was improving. Maester Luwin hoped he might walk with crutches come the spring. Rickon had tamed a direwolf pup. Winterfell held steady, but rumors ran of wildlings raiding along the shivering sea and of shadows in the woods. Catelyn ended with love and a plea. "Send Arya home. Let her be a Stark in the snow again." Ned read the words twice, set the parchment aside and told Sansa, "Go to your sister. Tell her we'll all return, when the realm is healed, not before." "Banalder." She nodded, saw the pain in his face, and left without another word. As autumn bled toward winter, the council took on new urgency. Tywin Lannister withdrew to Casterly Rock, but not without leaving a poisoned legacy. Bandits and broken men haunted the Riverlands, and the price of peace was vigilance. In the east, word came of Dothraki raids beyond the Bone Mountains, and of a dragon queen. Unbelieved by most, but whispered by Varys and the merchant captains from Pentos. Stannis took these rumors seriously. "The world does not sleep because we close our eyes," he told Ned in council. "Nor will winter wait for us to count our coins." So they built. Smithies and forges worked night and day. The city walls were patched, new ships launched. The gold cloaks, now under the command of Harwin Halfhand, patrolled the alleys and bridges. Each man wore a small badge in the shape of a bell, and the sound of the city's bells came to me not only warning but also hope. Weddings, births, feasts, and each day's safe passing. Mace Tyrell set the harvest trains moving, and grain from the Reach arrived by barge and wagon. The small folk ate well for the first time in years. Festivals bloomed, a feast for the new king, then another for the naming of Sansa Stark as Lady of Winterfell's Hope, a title invented to forestall 100 suitors, yet enough to satisfy the lords eager for alliances. Ned laughed quietly at that. "Lady of Hope? Let's hope we do not have to explain it to your mother." The lords of the realm, seeing the city heal, sent sons and daughters to court again. Some, like the Martells of Dorne and the Arryns of the Vale, came slowly, suspicious and guarded. Others, like the Hightowers and Redwynes, arrived in pomp. Even Lady Olenna Tyrell wrote a tart letter to Ned, congratulating him on at least keeping the city from burning to ash under your king's long face and stubborn honor. Varys whispered that peace too was a mask, and that one must always watch the shadows. But even the spider smiled more than he once had. One afternoon, as Ned and Barristan Selmy reviewed the new watch at the river gate, a messenger in red and gold approached, bearing a letter with the broken wax of House Tully. Ned read it, lips thinning. "Caitlin requests aid. River pirates have begun raiding the grain barges north of Maidenpool. She asks for men to ride with her to root them out." Barristan nodded. "Shall I ride, my lord?" "No," Ned said. "You are needed here. I will go." He called for armor, summoned Arya and Sansa, and told them, "I will ride north for a fortnight to help your mother. Obey Lady Brienne, obey Ser Davos, and keep to the castle. If trouble comes, send a raven to Robb." "Netter to." Arya grinned. "Can I come?" Ned shook his head. "Not this time, little wolf. There is peace, but the wild is never safe." He left at dawn, riding with 20 of his household knights and a score of Tyrell men led by Sir Garland. They crossed the Blackwater by ferry and took the old river road. The land was green, leaves red and gold, the air sharp with frost. Villages were slow to trust, too many broken oaths and old crimes. But the sight of Stark banners drew smiles from many, and even a few cheers. At Maidenpool, Caitlin met him with a tired but fierce embrace. They rode together through the riverlands, tracking the pirates to a ruined mill above the Green Fort. A sharp fight ended quickly, and the river ran clear again. That night, Ned and Caitlin sat beside a campfire, the tents quiet in the chill. Caitlin's hair was streaked with gray, her hands calloused from weeks in the saddle, but her eyes were as clear as ever. "I feared for you," she said, voice low. "All those days in King's Landing. So many daggers behind every smile." "I feared for us all," Ned answered, "but peace holds. Stannis is harsh, but just." She squeezed his hand. "And you? Will you stay there forever?" Ned shook his head. "No. When the realm is steady, when the north is safe, we return. I promise you that." They lay together beneath the stars, listening to the river and the slow, cold wind. In the morning, they rode west, then south, visiting outlying holds, righting wrongs, gathering what hope the land still held. At Raventree Hall, they feasted with Lord Blackwood, and heard songs of the old gods. At Acorn Hall, Arya's old friend, Jane Heddle, greeted Ned with news of wildlings who had come as far south as Harrenhal before vanishing into mist. They rode back to King's Landing in early frost, and the city greeted them as heroes. Stannis met them at the gate, face somber, but his words sincere. "You are the sword the realm needs, Stark. Do not leave it too long without your hand." Ned returned to his old labors, reviewing edicts, meeting with merchants, hearing disputes. He mediated a quarrel between the Faith and the Goldsmiths Guild, ordered new houses built for those made homeless in the riots, and oversaw the creation of a new square at the heart of Flea Bottom, a place for trade, for judgment, and, he hoped, for peace. Sansa took on more and more of her mother's duties, serving at feasts, tending to the sick in the sept, and even penning letters to the northern bannermen in her father's name. She grew into her role with a steady, quiet grace, and soon even the Tyrells conceded she was a lady to be reckoned with. Arya, ever restless, joined Syrio's band of street children, patrolling the city's walls and alleys, reporting trouble before it could spread. She made friends among the smiths, the dock workers, the pie sellers, and even the gold cloaks. Her presence became a silent warning. If Arya Stark saw it, the Hand would soon know. The seasons shifted. Snow fell early that year, dusting the city in white. For the first time in memory, the Blackwater did not freeze over. The harbor remained busy with trade. Ned walked the ramparts with Barristan, surveying the horizon. "Winter will be hard," the old knight said, "but the realm will hold." "Because we have made it so," Ned replied. In council, Stannis proposed a great assembly at Harrenhal. All the lords of the realm, great and small, to swear the peace, to set in law the new order, and to witness the king's judgment on the crimes of the war. There was resistance. Some lords feared Tywin, others hated Stannis' severity, some merely hated to travel. But Ned's quiet persuasion and Sansa's letters worked slowly. By the time spring touched the city, banners from every corner of Westeros fluttered along the roads. The assembly at Harrenhal was unlike any gathering in a generation. Old enemies met across long tables. Oaths were sworn, grievances aired. Tywin Lannister appeared in person, flanked by Cersei and Tommen and 100 knights. But there was no challenge, no duel, no knife in the night. The king's justice was absolute, but Stannis, urged by Ned, showed mercy to the lesser offenders, clemency to those who had lost most. The Faith was given new lands, and the city's orphans, many of them Arya's friends, were made wards of the crown. Ned's greatest moment came on the last day. At the close of council, before all the lords and ladies, Stannis rose and called Sansa and Arya forward. "These are the daughters of the North," he declared, "who have suffered much and served the realm with courage. By their grace, the peace holds. By their hope, the next generation will be better." He named Sansa, the Queen's regent in the North, an honor meant to ease Catelyn's burden and bind the North to the crown. He named Arya protector of the city's children. Both girls stood proud, and Ned, watching from below the dais, felt the pride and ache of a father's heart. That night, as the fires burned low and the banners fell silent, Ned walked alone through the halls of Harrenhal, now whole again after so many years. The stones seemed to hum with life and history, as if remembering their own storms and feasts and tragedies. Ned paused at a high window, looking north. The road ahead was long, and there would be more war, more famine, more death. No king's edict, no knight's sword, could keep the wild and the cold at bay forever. But the realm was stronger now, the people less afraid. He returned to King's Landing with his daughters, with Arya's new wolf pup bounding at her heels, with Sansa already planning letters to Robb and Catelyn, with the bells ringing for the first spring feast. The city was green and white, alive with voices and hope. Barristan Selmy, now Lord Commander, greeted him at the gate with a smile. "Peace suits you, my lord." "Peace suits us all," Ned answered. And so life resumed, not as it had been, but as it could be. 1,000 little mercies, small victories, hard-won trust. In time, Ned sent for Robb, for Catelyn and Rickon, and when the first snows began to melt, the Starks rode north at last, escorted by knights of every house, by Davos and Brienne and Barristan. The city watched them go, and the bells pealed not in mourning, but in hope. Winter would come, as it always did. But now at least it would come to a kingdom ready to meet it, scarred perhaps but unbroken. And in the high woods outside Winterfell, as Ned crossed beneath the old grey walls, the dire wolves howled, and their song was a song of home, of promise kept, of a long peace finally won. Okay. Yeah. The wind in the north was different. Sharper, older. When Ned Stark rode beneath the broken arch of Moat Caelin's southern gate, His bones shivered as if to remind him he was home, but changed. Behind him, the columns stretched for a league. Starks, Tullys, Stark bannermen, knights in the green and gold of Tyrell, the blue of Arryn, a handful of white cloaks and their Lord Commander Barristan Selmy, even Davos Seaworth's battered galley guard on foot. There was laughter sometimes, Sansa talking with Brienne, Arya riding astride the wolfhound she called Frost. Yet silence ruled. The silence of men and women who'd seen too much blood in too short a span, all clutching at this strange, almost fragile peace. The return to Winterfell began as a rumor. Ravens and word of mouth, impossible to keep hidden in the north for long. By the time the party reached Barristan, the road was lined with villagers in rough furs, holding up children so they might see the Stark banners again, waving, weeping, calling Ned's name as though to conjure him from a legend. My lord, is it truly you?" An old woman pressed a withered hand to his stirrup, tears leaving tracks in the grime on her cheeks. "I prayed to the old gods for you every day." Ned dismounted, clasped her hands. "And they heard, good mother," he said, voice thick, "for they brought us home." That night, he and Catelyn sat in the smoky hall of Lord Dustin, breaking bread with men and women who had fought for the North through rebellion, through the sack of Winterfell, through the long years of hunger. Robb rode out from Winterfell with a column of horse to meet them. His face harder than Ned remembered, but his voice the same. Rickon was half wild, but threw himself at his father's knees, and would not let go. Bran came on crutches but standing. Ned knelt, enfolded him, and for a moment there was no hand, no king. Only father and son, the hearth at Winterfell whole once more. They rested in Barristan 2 days. Maester Luwin arrived, bringing news from every village. Crops that needed blessing, rumors of wolves grown bold, a wildling band that had crossed the White Knife and then vanished in the snows. Ned listened to every petition, made notes, nodded gravely as Catelyn poured honeyed wine and Sansa soothed the frightened children. Arya joined a knot of boys in the yard and taught them Braavosi stances until their fathers begged her to stop. Brienne drilled the older squires, and even Barristan Selmy, grizzled and courteous, showed the sons of the Barrows how to break a shield wall. The north was healing, and Ned could see it in the new roofs, the laughter, the way men and women looked at each other as if seeing the world for the first time in years. They rode north again, through mists and the first true snow of the year. Robb rode beside Ned. "You will not leave again?" he asked. Eyes shadowed. "I go where the realm requires," Ned answered. "But the realm is here, now. Stannis holds the south. The north holds itself." Robb nodded, silent, looking not at his father but at the horizon, where the woods stretched like a dark sea beneath the pale sky. They reached Winterfell at dusk, the first of the ravens already cawing from the towers. The old grey stones stood unbowed, their scars visible, but their strength unbroken. Ned crossed the drawbridge, heart beating so hard he thought he might fall. Old Nan stood at the top of the steps, wiping her eyes with a sleeve. "You're late, my lord," she scolded, and he kissed her brow. In the great hall, banners fluttered. Direwolf, Trout, sunburst of Karstark, the broken moon of Manderley, the reeds of the Crannogmen. There was a feast that night, the like of which Winterfell had not seen in a generation. The fires roared, meat and mead were passed. Minstrels sang of the long peace, and Sansa danced with half the young lords of the north. Arya, in doublet and hose, bested 2 of the castle's grooms at the quarterstaff, and Rickon fell asleep in Catelyn's lap with a wolf pup at his feet. Ned watched it all, trying to fix the moment in memory. "You should rest," Catelyn whispered. "Let Robb sit in your chair tonight." "I'll rest soon enough," Ned replied, though he sat until the candles burned low and the snow hissed on the flagstones outside. The weeks passed swiftly. Ned set about his old duties with new purpose. He met with the lords, heard their grievances, dispatched riders to the farthest holds. Wildlings were driven back, not by swords, but by gifts of grain and oaths, exchanged at the edge of the haunted forest. Old enemies were called to council, Karstark and Manderley, Reed and Umber, and each house sent sons to Winterfell to foster peace. There were quarrels, but they were settled by words, not by blood. The Stark name carried weight, but so too did Ned's promise. The peace would hold, or the North would bleed. Robb took command of the garrisons, drilling the men, sending patrols east and west. He ruled with a steadiness that surprised Ned, the Wolf Lord's instincts growing in him. Bran, too, found his place. He took to books and accounts, working with Maester Luwin to track harvests and stores, and the small folk marveled that the crippled boy knew every man, every field, every tree. Rickon chased the hounds, wild as ever, but less angry now, content to shadow his father or play with Arya's wolf. Sansa wrote letters by the fire, her script growing more elegant with each day. She sent word to Old Town, to River Run, to the courts of the Vale and the Reach, and the responses were warm, filled with congratulations and invitations. Catelyn read them and nodded. "You would have made a great lady of court," she told her daughter. Sansa only smiled. "I am a Stark first." Arya divided her time between the practice yard and the wild woods. She carried a blade now, one gifted by Syrio. Thin as a needle, its hilt wrapped in blue leather. She taught the stable boys to spar, raced the dogs through the snow, disappeared for hours with the Crannog children, and sometimes returned with rabbits for the cook. Ned tried to scold her, but she only grinned, and he found himself unable to keep from smiling back. One clear dawn, as the wolves howled from the Godswood, a rider brought news from the wall. The Night's Watch had sent a raven. The wildlings stirred, but there was no threat yet. Jon Snow, now steward to the Lord Commander, had written as well, a brief, careful hand, but with warmth that cheered Ned's heart. The boy was a man now, and the wall had made him strong. Samwell Tarly sent his greetings, and Ghost, Jon said, had grown huge, a shadow at dusk. Ned read the letter aloud to the family at breakfast, and for a moment, the pain of separation was softened by pride. That winter was hard, the cold deeper than any in years. But the North endured. Men came from White Harbor and Last Hearth to trade salt and wool, and the castle stores held strong. The rivers froze, the woods grew silent, and wolves prowled close to the walls. Bran led the carols at the Winter's Gift, and even Arya stood beside him, singing, though off-key. As spring approached, a delegation arrived from the south. Sir Davos Seaworth, representing King Stannis and Lord Edric Storm, now recognized as Stannis' heir. They brought gifts: gold, spices, bolts of cloth, and letters of friendship. Ned welcomed them in the great hall. Davos bowed deeply. "King Stannis sends his word, my lord. The peace is holding. He asks if the North will send a contingent of men for the coming tourney at King's Landing. A celebration of unity, he calls it." Robb looked at his father, wary. "The North has little love for tourneys." Ned smiled. "But we will send men, and a Stark or two besides. The realm must see that the North keeps its word." Arya whooped. "Can I go, father? I'll ride for Winterfell in the lists." Laughter rippled through the hall, even from dour Maester Luwin. Sansa looked wistful. "A tourney, songs and feasts, and knights in shining armor." "We'll see," Ned promised. "But only if the peace holds." Catelyn drew him aside after the feast. "Do you trust Stannis?" "As much as any king," Ned replied. "He is harsh but fair, and he keeps his word." Catelyn squeezed his hand. "Then let us pray the gods keep him, and all of us." Preparations for the journey south began in earnest. Robb would remain as lord, but Sansa and Arya would travel with Ned and Catelyn, accompanied by Brienne, Barristan Selmy, and a dozen Stark guards. Bran, still unable to ride far, would remain with Maester Luwin and Sir Roderick. Rickon pouted, but was soon distracted by the promise of his own wolf pup, and the prospect of leading the hounds in the coming summer. The party set out at first thaw, the roads wet but passable, the woods alive with birdsong. They passed through villages where the sight of Stark banners brought cheers and laughter. And when they reached White Harbor, Lord Wyman manderly welcomed them with a feast. There was talk of ships, trade, new alliances, and Ned listened to each with the careful patience of a man who had learned how quickly peace could fray. On the road south, Sansa composed poems and sang with Arya, who complained loudly but sang nonetheless. Brienne taught them both to ride like proper warriors, to the amusement of the guards. Barristan Selmy told stories of the old days, of the tourneys at Harrenhal, of the trident, of the days when the kingdom had seemed a single body, not a collection of wounded limbs. Catelyn rode beside Ned, sometimes silent, sometimes laughing, always watching. At King's Landing the city seemed transformed. New banners flew from the ramparts. The crowned stag of Baratheon beside the direwolf of Stark, the sunflower of Tyrell, the falcon of Arryn. The streets were clean, the gold cloaks disciplined and courteous. At the great sept, the bells tolled for a week of peace and remembrance, and crowds lined the avenues to watch the arrival of the North. Stannis received them in the throne room, his face as stern as ever, but his welcome was genuine. Sansa and Arya were presented to the court. Sansa was acclaimed for her letters and her role in healing the city, Arya for her courage. Brienne was honored by the king as Lady Protector of the Queen's peace, and Barristan Selmy was confirmed as Lord Commander for life. The tourney was grand, if smaller than those of old. Knights from every corner of the realm competed, and Sansa watched, enthralled, as lances splintered and swords clanged. Arya, disguised in a squire's cap, bested several boys her age at the archery, but was found out when she laughed too loudly at a Tyrell squire's fall into the mud. Ned and Catelyn met with lords from Dorne, the Reach, and the Vale. They heard news of new trading ventures, plans for roads and bridges, ideas for restoring the king's peace to every village. There were disputes, of course, but Stannis listened, and Ned saw that the king's hand was heavy, but it was just. That summer, Westeros felt whole for the first time in years. When the time came to return north, Ned met with Stannis on the balcony overlooking the bay. "You have kept your word," Stannis said. "The north is quiet. The realm endures." "As it should," Ned answered. Stannis nodded. "The wildlings gather beyond the wall. The night's watch is strong, but winter will test us all. If you have need, send word. I will answer." Ned clasped his forearm. "And if you have need, the north will answer." So the Starks rode home again, past green fields and quiet villages, to the walls of Winterfell. Each day, the land seemed stronger. The wounds of war healed a little more. Arya and Sansa grew into women of wit and strength. Robb into a lord of patience and might. Bran, clever and sharp-eyed, watched over the accounts, while Rickon and the pups ran wild beneath the towers. Years passed. The peace held. Children grew, old friends died, new ones were made. Sometimes storms threatened, bandits in the riverlands, a harsh winter, the slow return of old enemies. But Ned faced each with the same iron patience, the same quiet hope. And one autumn, when the snow began to fall early, and the wolves howled in the woods, Ned stood atop the battlements and looked to the north. The air was cold and clean, the sky sharp as ice. He heard his children laughing in the yard below, saw the banners of Winterfell fluttering against the gray, and felt the strength of home. "We have endured," he murmured, "and we will endure again. For all things change, and all things end, but the Starks of Winterfell remained, steady as the stones, patient as the snows, always standing watch for the dawn." Inga. The wind off the wall was sharper than any sword, even in high summer, with the sun hanging low and bright above the vast emptiness of the true north. Ned Stark felt the old chill in his bones as he stood atop Winterfell's highest tower and looked northward. The wall itself was a thin blue line on the horizon, distant as a half-remembered song, but his thoughts were with the men who held it. Jon Snow, now a ranger and a true brother of the Night's Watch, and Benjen, his brother, vanished beyond into snows and silence. Ned had written many times, words of pride, of love, of the world turning steadily toward peace. The replies, brief and spare, spoke of wildlings banding for safety, of the long, deep cold, and the coming of a winter no man could name. The years had passed in the slow, inexorable way that they did for every lord of Winterfell, measured by the rising of new banners on the battlements, the changing of the seasons in the godswood, and the growth of his children. Robb's beard was full now, his face weathered by command, his speech as deliberate and unhurried as any Stark before him. Bran moved through the corridors with a crutch under one arm and a ledger in his free hand, his eyes bright as ice chips, and Rickon ran wild in the forests, his wolf a white shadow between the trees. Sansa, grown into beauty and wisdom, managed the keep, with a grace that Catelyn often watched with silent pride. Arya rode out with the patrols, teaching the young squires what Syrio had taught her years before. Their laughter in the courtyard drifted to Ned's ears on a breeze that made his heart ache with happiness, and with the knowledge of all they had endured to reach this peace. Winterfell itself bore its scars with dignity. The outer wall, rebuilt with stone from the broken towers of the east, stood higher than before. The great hall's new rafters gleamed, and the glass gardens were fuller than any remembered. The townsfolk had returned, their faith in Stark justice strong as the roots of the old heart tree. The first snows came late that year, but came they did, blanketing the roofs in white, filling the woods with the tracks of deer and wolf alike, the world quiet save for the cry of a hawk or the lowing of cattle in the fields. One day, as Ned walked with Catelyn beneath the red boughs of the godswood, he found her watching him, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "You are not content," she said gently. "I am," Ned replied, and meant it. "But I am always waiting." "For what?" He shook his head. "For the other shoe to fall, for some old shadow to cross our hearth." She took his hand in hers. "You have given the North peace, Ned. The realm, too, in your way. You cannot watch every horizon." "I can try." She laughed, kissed his cheek, and drew him down beside her on the cold stone bench beneath the weirwood. The carved face, its eyes bleeding red, looked down on them both. "Do you regret returning?" He looked at her and past her, at the castle's towers outlined against the sky, at the smoke rising from the forges and the laughter echoing from the yard. "Never," he said. "If I had not, what would we be now?" Catelyn said nothing for a time, only leaned her head on his shoulder. The wind stirred the red leaves. "The world is changing, Ned. Our children will see things we cannot dream of. Even the wall will not last forever." He smiled. "Nor will the winter. But Starks will." Mens. That afternoon, Robb brought word from the port at White Harbor. A galley from King's Landing had arrived, bearing Lord Davos Seaworth and a company of the king's men. Davos himself came north in person, his beard whiter, his hand as blunt and honest as ever. With him rode Ser Brienne and a squire in Baratheon colors. Young Edric Storm, Stannis' acknowledged heir. They brought a message from King Stannis, an invitation to a council at Storm's End, a gathering of lords to address trade and the growing threat of pirates from the east, and to cement the king's peace with new alliances and oaths. Ned met them in the great hall, the fire blazing. Sansa poured wine for the guests, and Arya questioned the squire about his swordplay until Edric grinned and challenged her to a bout. Robb and Davos spoke long and quietly, and after the meal, Davos gave Ned the king's letter. Words of respect and gratitude, and an urging to bring the wisdom of the North to Storm's End. "He trusts you," Davos said as they stood together at the window, watching snow swirl over the Bailey. "The lords of the Reach and the Riverlands trust you. Your peace holds the realm together." Ned shook his head. "It's the king's peace. It's held by men and women who want to live and see their children grow." "Still," Davos said, "your name carries weight. The men of Dorne, the Ironborn. There is always talk of old wounds, new ambitions. The king would have your counsel." "Maybe." Ned agreed to go, with Sansa and Arya, and a company of Stark men. Robb would stay to rule Winterfell, Bran to mind the ledgers, Rickon to chase the wolves. Catelyn would remain too, to oversee the harvest and ensure the North's voice was heard even in his absence. It was not the first time they had parted, but there was a new heaviness in it, as if both knew the world had grown strange again. The old wounds never fully healed. The journey south was easier than it had ever been. The roads were patrolled, the bridges repaired, and the villages bustling. At White Harbor, Wyman Manderley greeted them with honey cakes and strong wine. At Moat Cailin, the Reeds came out of the marshes, Jojen and Mira older now, but as sharp-eyed as ever. The Riverlands had rebuilt, and Edmure Tully's riders met them at the fords with gifts and news. Trade was flowing again. Grain and fish and timber, moving west and south. And there had been no banditry for a year. At Storm's End, the sea air was salt and sharp. The walls as high and formidable as Ned remembered. Stannis greeted them with a nod, his face stern but not unkind. The council gathered in the great hall. Lords from every corner of the realm, Dorne and the Reach, the Vale and the Westerlands, the North. The topics were many: trade, roads, ports, the guarding of the narrow sea, rumors of dragons in the east and Ironborn stirring on the western isles. Ned spoke little at first, listening as old rivalries surfaced and subsided, as plans were made and alliances tested. When his turn came, he stood and said, "It is peace we have won. Let us not lose it to pride or greed. The North will trade with any who keep the king's law, and our ships will ride with yours to protect the coast from pirates. We ask only respect and the right to keep our ways." There was argument, there always was, but Stannis' hand was heavy and Davos' voice wise. The council lasted a fortnight, ending with new treaties and promises sworn before the old gods and the new. When it was done, Stannis asked Ned to stay a while. Late one evening, as they stood atop the Storm's End battlements, the king turned to Ned and said, "I am old Stark. The realm will need strong hands when I am gone. My heir is young. I will not force the North to kneel, but I ask that you guide him as you have guided me." Ned bowed his head. "The North remembers your grace. We will keep faith." Stannis clasped his forearm, and there was a rare flicker of warmth in his eyes. "Then let us hope it will be enough." They returned to Winterfell by slow stages, the journey easier now for its familiarity. At the Trident, Arya rode ahead with a group of scouts, returning with news of a poacher caught on Manderley lands, and Sansa met with the Lady of Maidenpool to discuss a marriage alliance between a Stark cousin and a Mouton. But Ned watched both daughters with pride, one wild and fierce, the other wise and careful, both bearing the best of wolf and river. At White Harbor, they paused for a feast, and Ned listened as Wyman Manderley recited a new poem about the peace of the realm, full of clever turns and sly jabs at old foes. Sansa sang with the minstrels, Arya arm-wrestled the squires, and Davos Seaworth, lingering before returning south, gave Ned a packet of letters. One from Jon Snow at the Wall, another from Samwell Tarly in Old Town, and a third from Brienne, now sworn sword to Sansa. At Winterfell, the snows had come heavy. The town was bright with lanterns and fires, and the smell of baking bread filled the halls. Robb greeted his father with an embrace, and Bran told him of a new irrigation scheme for the fields west of the Holdfast. Rickon, taller now but still wild, boasted of a wolf cub tamed, and Catelyn, her hair streaked with silver, welcomed them home with a smile that held all the warmth of the South in winter. That night, as the Starks gathered in the great hall, the wind howled outside and the snow drifted against the doors. The fire blazed high, and laughter and song filled the air. Ned sat with his family, watching the play of light on their faces, and felt a peace deeper than any he had known. The years rolled onward, each season marked by feast and labor, sorrow and joy. Robb married a daughter of House Reed, sealing the peace with the Crannogmen. Sansa became Lady of Winterfell in truth, managing the household and the lands with a gentle hand. Arya rode far and wide, sometimes to the Wall, sometimes to White Harbor, always returning with news and stories. Bran, ever the quiet one, became a lore keeper and judge, his wisdom prized by old men and young alike. Rickon went south for a time, squired at Storm's End, and returned a man grown, carrying the sword of a knight and the cunning of a wolf. Ned watched as his children grew into themselves, each following their own path but always returning to Winterfell. Always bound by the old words, "The North remembers." The words gained new meaning as peace settled into the bones of the land. Old grudges faded, new alliances flourished. When Stannis died, peacefully, at last, in his bed at Storm's End, Edric Storm was crowned king. Ned journeyed south for the coronation, standing at the boy's right hand as oaths were sworn, as lords and ladies bent knee, as the kingdom renewed itself once more. The North kept faith, sending men and grain, holding the wall, guarding the passes, and always remembering what war had cost. On the day Ned Stark felt the old ache in his chest, when the healers whispered of time and age, he called his children to his side in the godswood. Snow dusted the red leaves, and the heart tree's face watched them with ancient, silent sorrow. Robb stood at his right hand, Sansa and Arya beside him, Bran on the bench, Rickon kneeling in the snow. Catelyn, wrapped in a heavy cloak, stood behind. "The world will change again," Ned said, voice soft but steady. "You must be strong and wise and merciful. The peace we have built is precious, but it can be lost in a heartbeat. Remember the North, remember who you are." He clasped each of their hands, one by one, feeling the warmth and strength in each. He looked at Catelyn and saw in her eyes the sum of all their years. "I have loved this land and this family more than any king's favor or city's gold. I leave it in your hands now. Guard it well." The wind sighed in the branches above, carrying with it the scent of snow and pine and old magic. The wolves howled in the distance, and the echoes rolled through the trees, a song of home and memory. Ned Stark closed his eyes, breathed the cold air, and felt at last at peace. Winterfell stood. Seasons passed, and with them came new kings and queens, new wars and treaties. But the North endured. Travelers spoke of the ancient keep, of the wise lords and ladies who ruled there, of the laughter that echoed in the courtyards, the howling of wolves at night, the peace that had been bought so dearly. And always, in the godswood, the red leaves fell, and the heart tree watched, silent and eternal. The North remembered. The North endured. And the Starks watched for the dawn. The cold in the North crept in slow, inexorable waves, settling over Winterfell in a hush as ancient as the stones themselves. Each day the sun rose lower, and the dawns brought frost on every sill and silver breath in the halls. But beneath the cold, there was a deep warmth, a sense of steadiness, of a world at peace with itself. It was a peace won through hardship, through scars not only on the land, but on the hearts of those who called Winterfell home. Ned Stark walked the ramparts before sunrise, his cloak drawn tight, boots crunching on the thin crust of ice that formed each night on the stones. Below, the bailey was quiet, except for the distant barking of dogs and the lazy murmur of stable hands. The years had changed Ned. Gray now streaked his hair and beard, and there was a slowness in his stride. But in his eyes was a steadiness that no sorrow or winter could shake. His thoughts were always with his family first. He remembered the days when the fate of a kingdom had rested on his word, and the weight of that memory shaped the way he ruled his own house now. There was a gentleness in his judgment, and a patience that the young knights and stewards who came to Winterfell to learn often remarked on. They said Lord Eddard ruled as if the realm could be mended piece by piece, so long as one kept faith and heart. Robb, his eldest, was every inch the Northman now, broad-shouldered, level-eyed, quick to smile but quicker to act. Robb and his wife, a reed of the neck, had filled Winterfell with laughter and new life. A daughter with her mother's green eyes, and a boy with the wild hair and fierce heart of the Starks. Robb rode each week to the villages, listening to his people, hunting in the woods, meeting with the old clans in the mountain holds. His bannermen trusted him, and the common folk called him the White Wolf, after the wolfskin cloak he wore at every gathering. Bran kept to the library and the counting room, his limp no longer a mark of sorrow but a badge of wisdom. It was said no one knew more of the North's rivers, taxes, and secret paths than Lord Brandon. He was respected even by the oldest stewards, and maesters from as far as Old Town wrote, seeking his advice on matters both scholarly and practical. Sansa was the heart of the keep, tall, red-haired, her voice carrying calm through the halls as she managed the stores, the kitchens, the weaving rooms. She hosted the great feasts with such grace that guests from the south were always surprised to find a lady so warm and strong so far from the king's roads. When the first frost came, it was Sansa who led the lantern procession, and who each year named the wolf's feast in memory of those lost to winter. Arya, wild as ever, was rarely still. Some days she patrolled the castle walls, sparring with the guards. Others she was gone with the hunters for a fortnight at a time, ranging as far as the western coast or the deep woods by the shivering sea. She rode with a band of wolf-blooded youths, boys and girls trained in woodcraft, archery, swordplay, protecting travelers, chasing away bandits, sometimes returning with strange guests from distant lands. Arya's courage and unyielding sense of justice gave hope to the lonely and frightened, and it was said that no harm ever came to a child under her watch. Rickon, still young in Ned's eyes, though grown tall and strong, became a favorite of the clansmen. He rode with them on the wild moors and led the spring drives. Rickon's wolf, great and dark-furred, was his shadow. Together they ranged farther than any Stark since the days of the Kings of Winter. Catelyn moved through all their lives, wise and loving, always present in some quiet way. Her red hair, streaked now with silver, and her keen gaze gave comfort and caution both. She wrote to the great houses, Arryn, Tully, Tyrell, keeping alive the alliances that held the realm together. With Catelyn beside him, Ned felt stronger. With her voice at council and her laughter at supper, he remembered the joy of the old days. The ravens brought news from beyond the north too. Jon Snow's letters from the wall, terse but warm. The wildlings keep to their valleys, the watch is strong, and Ghost sends his greeting. Samwell Tarly, now Maester at Castle Black, wrote of his own growing family, and of new hopeful days for the Night's Watch. Benjen's name was carved into the black stone, and on the day each year that honored the fallen, Ned would light a candle for his brother in the Godswood. One winter day, as snow swirled against the high windows, the gates rang with the arrival of riders. Arya had led a party from the western fells. Among them were a wounded man in golden mail, and a young woman with braids like the women of the Summer Islands. Arya brought them to the hall, stamping the snow from her boots. He was set upon by outlaws, she told her father. His name is Sir Lyle of Old Town. He carries a letter for the king. Ned read the letter in the firelight. The seal was of King Edric Storm, now 3 years into his reign. The letter spoke of new piracy on the narrow sea, and an invitation, a council at White Harbor, to be attended by the lords of the north, the east, and the riverlands, to form a fleet and stand united against threats from across the sea. Ned nodded deep in thought. Robb agreed. It is right for the north to stand with the realm, but we must be careful. Pirates may be only the shadow of a larger storm. Sansa prepared the guest rooms, and Arya, grinning, offered to guide the lord's party south. Catelyn planned the journey, sending ravens to their bannermen. Bran sent for the accounts and arranged for extra wagons of grain and salt beef for the long ride. When the time came, Ned rode out with Robb, Arya, Sansa, and 100 of Winterfell's best. They passed through villages gleaming in the snow, through deep woods where children ran beside the wagons, and over rivers glazed in ice. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman Manderly, older and stouter than ever, welcomed them with a feast. The great hall glowed with torchlight, the air thick with the scents of roast duck and spiced honey. Banners hung from every rafter. Baratheon, Tyrell, Tully, Stark, Arryn, Manderly. And Ned felt a flicker of hope. Here, at least, the kingdom still lived. The council was swift and grave. King Edric listened to his lords, careful and quiet, but his words were those of a man grown strong by trouble. "We have seen peace," he said. "Let us not lose it for want of ships and friendship." The lords agreed on building a new fleet at White Harbor to guard the seas from pirates, slavers, and any new threat from beyond the horizon. Ned gave men, wood, and grain. So did the others. Plans were made for new roads, new watchtowers along the coast, and new laws to protect the weak from the powerful. After the council, Ned lingered with Davos Seaworth, now Lord of the Rainwood, and trusted advisor to the young king. Davos, gray and missing 2 more fingers, still had the heart of the smuggler who had once brought onions to Storm's End. "We do our best," he told Ned over a mug of ale. "But the world is full of men who want what others have. The sea's always hungry." Ned nodded. "So are the snows. But we guard each other, Davos. We remember." Meh. Returning to Winterfell, the road was muddy and cold, but the company was cheerful. Sansa rode with the queen's retinue, exchanging stories and songs. Arya took the lead scouts, vanishing for hours, and returning with tales of wild stags and hidden streams. Robb rode beside his father. "We are lucky, father," he said. "The realm has peace, our house is strong, and the north endures." Ned smiled, watching the woods pass. "It is not luck, Robb. It is the will of men and women who refuse to break." Back at Winterfell, the work of the year began again. The snows melted, rivers swelled, and the new ships at White Harbor were soon ready to sail. Letters from King's Landing spoke of festivals and fair weather. News from the Wall was good. The wildlings kept their peace, and Jon Snow had been named Lord Commander. Ned sent him a sword from Winterfell, and Arya wrote a letter filled with jokes and boasts, to which Jon replied with one of his rare, crooked smiles. One night, as the moon cast a pale glow over the Godswood, Ned met Catelyn beneath the heart tree. The children were all grown now. Even Rickon, tall as his father, was soon to marry a daughter of House Mormont. Sansa was with child. Arya was planning a great hunt. Bran was preparing a map of the Northlands. And Robb had a new son in his arms. "I have seen the world change, Cat," Ned said softly. "I have seen winter and war, kings rise and fall. I have watched our children suffer and flourish. I thought once that peace was something won by the sword. But it is not. It is something built. Day by day, word by word, choice by choice. It is something we must teach, even as we stand ready to defend it." "Maiden." Catelyn smiled, leaning into his side. "You have taught them well, Ned. All of them. They will teach their children and their children's children. The North remembers." They stood in silence, listening to the wind in the branches. The distant call of a wolf. Ned felt the weight of years, and the strength of home. He knew there would be hard times ahead. There always were. But he also knew the world was better for the sacrifices they had made. That winter, the snows came late, and the harvests were good. Winterfell's halls rang with laughter, with the cries of children, with the stories of the old and the dreams of the young. The direwolves howled on moonlit nights, their voices carrying across the cold fields and forests. Peace, hard-earned and hard-kept, wrapped the North in its embrace. And at the heart of it all, beneath the red leaves of the old gods, Eddard Stark watched and remembered. As the seasons turned and the world changed, Winterfell endured, and the North stood guard against the dark, as it always had, and always would.